Chapter 301 Meeting the God of Anxiety. The long sword had been held steady in Suchi's hand. Who? Young Master Ash suddenly shuddered, lifting his eyes towards the person before him. He was first slightly stunned, then his pupils contracted. He recognized this guy. You, the guy who showed up in Night City. Have we met? Suchi smiled. The expression on young Master Ash's face darkened, but he didn't get the chance to say anything, because at this moment, surrounding them were copious amounts of black fog and dark red rolling about. Guardians were growling on the outskirts, unable to get close. He himself was only able to stand here thanks to the protection. That protective strength was rapidly dissolving. What are you going to do? Young Master Ash intended to retreat first, aiming to disappear amidst the terrifying burst of fluctuation. But it seemed that the commotion around them was getting louder and louder. The entire flesh sphere expanded tenfold, numerous pipes burst, and the black fog and crimson burst out an extremely unsettling density. Of course, I'm going to take it out. Don't say, this sword is quite deep. Suchi murmured to himself, under the astonished gaze of young Master Ash, that sword which he himself could hardly pull out. At this moment, with a sharp sound, was drawn by Suchi, who then held it aloft and declared, "A new hero is born." Yellow-robed priest, Kujie, standing in the distance below, looked dazedly at the figure atop the flesh sphere. Is that Subushien? It must be. At this moment, young Master Ash's body shook slightly, murder flashed in his eyes, a furious rage born of embarrassed anger. This guy in front of him, how dare he steal what was originally his? He wanted to swing his iron chain, to pierce through the guy in front of him, to take back his possession. However, Suchi didn't even glance at him, but instead looked towards the sky dome. Listen, there is an angry roar, resounding. After the longsword was pulled out, it reacted with other worlds. The balance had been broken. The upheaval of the God of Anxiety had begun. Countless pipes began to burst. The entire factory shook wildly. At this very moment, people from other worlds also looked at the sky dome and the core area with fearful expressions. A crimson color, like paint, poured from above the sky dome, from underground at the core area, as if a gate had opened and gushed out. It spread over all space with extreme speed and ferocity. Everyone who witnessed this scene trembled, and their pupils reflected the blood red. What's happening? The crimson tide has burst. Run! It's too late. The crowd screamed. They tried to flee but found the sky dome. Every direction was covered in crimson. There was nowhere to escape, and the Guardians, Fong Li and Tentacle Man, all injured, obtained the hinge item in different worlds, looking at everything before them, yet remained motionless. This is the first step. Why do I feel like I am barely breathing? The yellow-robed priest at this moment didn't know that all places in the anxious land, the last layer, were in upheaval. Apart from the temple which was safe, all other places were filling with crimson like a great flood. He too looked at the eruptions in the factory with some trepidation. You only have a soul now, what breath is there to take? Suchi said softly. Yeah. Why do I feel suffocated? The yellow-robed priest looked at the overwhelming crimson surge, the flame of his soul fire flickering. Because this is the anxious land. The next moment, be it Suchi, young Master Ash, or the surrounding people, they were all instantly submerged by the crimson. Whether it was the factory or all the different strange worlds, they were all swallowed by the crimson. The desolation of balance, the upheaval of the God of Anxiety, the end, was about to truly begin. Dolly and the bellringer, too, watched the monitor, feeling the rumbling vibration from beneath their feet. They exchanged looks, somewhat surprised. That was fast, closer to the God of Anxiety than any assistant had ever been before. Everyone has now been pulled in, but most people are now in a dormant, chaotic state. Only those guided by the eye of destiny are qualified to confront the God of Anxiety directly. The bellringer slowly sensed the movements beneath the floor, The eye of destiny will guide everything. Although the bellringer had told everyone the rules and mentioned the rewards, in fact, there was something that had not been mentioned. The eye of destiny will guide all those with a success rate higher than 1% to where they ought to go. So, as everyone maintained their protections, in terrifying various regions, among terrifying various phantom monsters, carefully scavenging and so on, many people had already been sorted out by the eye of destiny. They should be in contact with the god of anxiety by now. Only, it remains to be seen if this time, like before, they all fail. The sky carried a tinge of dark red. Within the empty city, throngs of people bustled about their busy lives in the city. To work, to school, subways traveling between cities. And Suchi stood on the rooftop of a skyscraper, looking down at the street where a boy with a school bag and long hair, head lowered, was walking slowly. Not just him. Many others were also quietly watching this little boy. They had been here for about 5 or 6 hours. But it was already the 4th day in this world. As for why this was happening, at this moment, the guardians, the 3 of them, and a man in black clothes who met again, gathered together. The man in black with his ancient-looking guards was not by his side, having been sifted away by the eye of destiny. The man in black frowned. "What do you think?" Fong Li analyzed. According to the guidance of the eye of destiny, and the existing information of past events, that boy is the key to everything. Chapter 302. From the moment everyone entered here, the eye of destiny had begun to guide them, just like the paradise system, providing clues and key information. This coincided with Suchi's previous thoughts. He had long believed that the entire design of the anxious land was very similar to paradise, and the person who had originally set it up probably had a significant connection with paradise. The eye of destiny guided us to this little boy. As a result, he encountered countless death accidents, car accidents, falling objects, gas explosions, and so on. Tentacle Man took over the conversation, pushing up his glasses. Every time a death occurred, it would instantly be devoured by deep red, and then the next day would come, and the boy would return to the starting point, then go out to school as usual, and encounter the same death accidents again. There were quite a few people, also hiding nearby, watching the boy with serious expressions. Some tried to block the accidents for him, but they couldn't prevent the next one. And if he noticed our traces, it would also trigger the boy's screaming, even exciting him to do crazy things like crashing into walls or biting his tongue. Leading us into the next day, Night Guard said solemnly, although they didn't know how they had ended up here. But Destiny's hints told them. The key to leaving lay with this little boy who would proceed to the next day each time he died. At the same time, those who made contributions would receive abundant points and the opportunity to unlock the final treasury. Naturally, everyone would not miss out on such a good thing. That is to say, from what we can see now, we must secretly protect him. The man in black also nodded in agreement. Then, at that time, look for a new breakthrough. Everyone agreed. Too bad Brother Su doesn't know where he is now. Night Guard looked around. But he probably has a similar conclusion. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, everyone was hiding along the boy's path, cautiously protecting him. But Suchi was sitting in a high-end restaurant in a hotel building, holding the menu and ordering braised pork, braised duck, sauce chicken, smoked pork belly, air-dried sausage. I'll take 2 servings of each. Su Buxian. The yellow-robed priest's voice came in exasperation. Are you complaining that I ordered too much meat? Then add a dish of scallion mixed with tofu. The yellow-robed priest cursed. Can't you do something serious? Didn't the eye of destiny guide to that little boy? Everyone is nearby, making moves to protect him, yet you're here muddling along. Suchi handed the menu to the waiter. Xiao Huang, you are a bit agitated. Suchi said softly, the whole key point indeed lies with that little boy, but first, we need to consider an issue. Why does he encounter so many death accidents? It's not like its final destination. The yellow-robed priest's tone cooled down a bit. His expression shifted slightly. Did you find out something? I can only say that little boy is sick, very seriously mentally ill, depressed, irritable, insane, and self-harming. Su Chi said softly, death isn't an accident, but rather, he wants to die all the time. The yellow-robed priest frowned. Is this the rule of this place? A strong inner inclination toward death, leading to continuous occurrence of death accidents. Pretty much, Su Chi acknowledged old Huang's statement. If that's the case, the yellow-robed priest's eyes flickered. I understand. It's not really about protecting him, but about resolving his inner turmoil. This is the real key to breaking the cycle. And achieving that is not an easy task, he said. So that's why you are sitting here calmly at ease. Your analysis is good. Su Chi paused. But, sorry, completely wrong. I just didn't tell everything. Desiring death, it actually means he wants us, wants everyone around to die. The yellow-robed priest was stunned. How could that be? Many people had almost confirmed that they had to protect the boy, all quietly making moves to stop accidents, car accidents, falling objects, sudden steel bar falls, and so on. Although a whole bunch of accidents happened just within a few hundred meters of road, everyone moved together in concert. After all, once death occurred, everything would move on to the next day. The so-called death accidents, whether they are car accidents, falling objects from high places, or the elusive gas explosions, all share one thing in common. That is, the number of deaths is never just the little boy alone. Su Chi raised his head to look at the sky. The first day's car accident. 5 people died. The second day, a giant sign fell from a high-rise building. 12 people died. The third day, a roadside barbecue exploded. 30 people died. The soul fire of the yellow-robed priest trembled slightly. The number of deaths is continuously increasing? Could it be a coincidence? He had not yet overturned his previous analysis and was also doubting the correctness of Su Chi's thoughts. Let's just wait then, Su Chi said softly. After all, according to this pace, the 4th day should also be over. During the wait, Su Chi watched the local news being broadcast on the projection screen in the upscale restaurant, as requested by him. He was also eating his meal while waiting. About 20 to 30 minutes later, the TV showed a change. We interrupt with a local news bulletin. Just moments ago, a collapse occurred in the city subway, currently burying a large number of people on their way to school or work. Rescue workers are rushing to the scene immediately. The yellow-robed priest watched this scene, speechless for a long time. Although I don't know the number of deaths, but Su Chi looked up at the sky dome, as a massive deep red suddenly descended, swallowing everything. Once again, he opened his eyes. Su Chi returned to the place he had previously entered, and it also marked the arrival of the 5th day. I made it. What? This time was quite lengthy, just enough for me to finish my meal. The yellow-robed priest really wanted to chop someone. So, what do you want to do now? What's the breaking point? The yellow-robed priest solemnly asked. Who knows? Su Chi slowly extended his hand to stop a taxi. I'm going to go take a look first. The taxi stopped. Where to? Mihua Street, no. 235. Where's that? The yellow-robed priest was startled. The little boy's home. Su Chi said, this time there should be ample time. I anticipate gathering a lot of clues. The yellow-robed priest said, spare me the sugarcoating. I'm just worried about that subway collapse. That's not easy to dodge. Don't worry. Su Chi calmly stated, the cause of the subway collapse, aside from structural instability and shoddy work, the most crucial trigger came from that gas explosion. Just solve that gas problem, and this deadly line will also be crossed. That kind of small matter those guys should be able to figure out with a little brainstorming, although there are at least 12 deadly steps. But it's not a big problem, let them hustle. I have only one goal, and that is to steal from the home. The yellow-robed priest felt somewhat suffocated. He had never seen Su Chi so resolute. Additionally, the sky dome has turned somewhat redder than the first time I saw it, Su Chi softly said. Time waits for no one. He understood better than anyone else what these deep reds represented. With each passing day, the sky's red would deepen and, concurrently, the various death threats triggered by the little boy would also become more terrifying. When the time came, it would be like Death Comes in Youth Edition, Pro version, Plus version. What terrifying things might happen, no one knew. But by then, everyone would be accompanying him in death, and although the analysis of many was wrong, their actions were right, making the next day come as late as possible. The rest was up to himself. He also had to seize the time, before the escalating threats of death burst forth, to obtain the clues that could resolve it all. Otherwise, it was also certain death. After all, that little boy was the god of anxiety. Chapter 303, Kill the God of Anxiety. Su Chi quickly arrived near an old residential district. Everyone in the city was vivid and lifelike, just like a real environment, with even some people dancing in the square. Without the little boy, it would seem just like an ordinary day in city life. It was excessive to be dancing in the square so early in the morning. Su Chi had already figured out the little boy's residence and made a leap. Thump! Su Chi landed on the balcony of the 5th floor, but he did not reach out to open the French window. The mat-covered housing, the room was full of mottled knife marks, all kinds of curse-related drawings, pieces of paper all over the floor, all written in fresh blood. D. 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 Su Chi did not rashly enter. This was the little boy's home, naturally filled with terrifying and fatal dangers. He could even see blood flowing from the bathroom, surrounded by various animal corpses, still hanging from the beams. All right, I admit that your earlier analysis was correct. Even after seeing this scene, the yellow-robed priest couldn't help but confirm. The little boy was not normal, and there was no need for protection or consolation. Moreover, there's something very wrong about everything here. The yellow-robed priest furrowed his brows, observing the scene in the room. Although only a little bit of soul fire remained, its essence was of a high sequence, its soul of high quality, able to feel things that ordinary people couldn't notice. This place was strange. Unlike the direct and terrifying aura of the deepest layer of the anxious land, it could only feel a terrible oppression coming from the room, creating an instinctive sense of dread. Su Chi directly reached out to open the door and entered quickly. The question marks would provide information about any dangers. Upon entering the study, Su Chi flipped through the items on the desk and glanced briefly. No parents, no sister, but has a house, and he's still depressed about nothing. The first day Su Chi had seen the little boy, he saw the words, God of Anxiety, though he understood this was not the true main body of the God of Anxiety, as there was a coffin suppressing it, and if the real entity were to appear here, it would have been game over. But the slight power seeping from the coffin was certainly extraordinary. What are you looking for? The yellow-robed priest watched Su Chi walking around like he was back in his own home, searching for something. I'm looking for where the safe is. Su Chi was aiming for the 4 patterned items he saw through a stethoscope. Those were key. The God of Anxiety was merely an obstacle. If he could find them in advance, he might not have to face the little boy directly. Unfortunately, the massive amount of cursed symbols and demon sketches did not reveal any traces of those items or a slightest clue. The yellow-robed priest suddenly became somewhat silent, staring intensely at the drawings and murmured doubtfully. What exactly is this little boy? These drawings feel very familiar, possessing ancient techniques. Old Huang, after all, was an experienced entity, and quickly noticed something was amiss just from a few glances. Ancient beings know these well, don't they? Know them, my ass. These are lost techniques, carrying a cursed aura. The yellow-robed priest shivered. What exactly is this little boy? It's not important. Su Chi was lying under the bed, where there were more drawings, designed by the little boy, of various instruments of torture, even recording different methods of death. These could make 100 episodes of Grim Reaper suffice. He really has a rich imagination. Is this the time to be admiring him? The yellow-robed priest said solemnly. I've seen many extremities of evil, But this kind, it's like it comes from an innate evil deep within the soul, truly rare. Su Chi continued to look through, and while the yellow-robed priest couldn't tell, the entire room was actually full of question marks, all warning him about the danger level here. For example, touching the cursed drawing stained with paint could trigger the curse to follow, and numerous accidental deaths could ensue. Some drawings even featured terrifying eyes, pupils, and just by looking at them, those methods of death would truly descend upon oneself. Fortunately, opening a spiritual eye could avoid all of this. In any case, although it was fraught with danger, Su Chi was accustomed to walking on a tightrope across Hell Cliff, with various lethal threats around him, but it wasn't much of a problem. "Did you find it?" the yellow-robed priest also observed, looking for the item Su Chi had described earlier. Only by finding it could he regain his soul power and bring his strength into play. This was also the goal of the yellow-robed priest. After all, he was a mighty demigod. Even if he regained only a bit of power, even if the little boy realized the items were taken and erupted, he was confident he could restrain it. But he found nothing. "Neither have I." About those 4 items. Indeed, there were no traces left. The yellow-robed priest frowned and said solemnly, "Could it be hidden somewhere in the city, or is it carried on him?" "It's more likely the latter. As a guardian, he must carry them with him at all times." "So, it looks like we've gained nothing from coming here?"
No.
Su Chi softly said, "We've learned a lot from the previous information. The background information of this little boy, his life traces, the level of danger, and what we need to do next, and what we need to do." Chapter 304. The yellow-robed priest was taken aback. "What is this? What's his next move?" Su Chi picked up a piece of paper, which showed the entire subway had collided on a large scale due to incorrect information. The little boy had also thoughtfully depicted many details. Countless bodies were crushed, penetrated, and scenes of pain and wailing were all captured in the drawing. At this very moment, those disguised as ordinary people on the subway, looking at the subway tunnel which hadn't collapsed, breathed a sigh of relief. Indeed, the gas cylinder was the key. After all, it was not far from the structure of the subway. As long as its explosion was prevented, the collapse wouldn't happen. "Try your best to protect him. Don't take this lightly." They also quietly followed into the subway. The little boy's situation was very special, surrounded by many death accidents, unable to be forewarned by everyone. They could only defend reactively. Protecting him was proving to be a difficult task, especially because they could not let him discover them. Otherwise, the boy would be terrified, become frantic, seek death. "The subway has started," the night guardian said slowly in a low voice. "Pay attention to the movements around, and make sure to protect the little boy." "I have a bad feeling." The man in black leaned against the door, watching the subway quickly passing the platform as it started. The sound of howling in his ears. The subway was moving at high speed through the dark tunnel. Everyone was vigilantly aware of everything around them. Yet they hadn't noticed that the little boy, his face lowered, was showing a cruel smile, and his eyes were filled with endless killing intent. Time passed by the minute and the second. In the crowded subway, some were scrolling through their phones, others were yawning and closing their eyes to rest, as is typical for the morning rush. The fatigue of the previous day did not disappear with a rest at home but stacked up the next day. And a few minutes later, someone noticed something was wrong, because the next platform was right in front of them. But the subway had not slowed down. In just a few seconds, the entire subway, with a whoosh, abruptly passed through the platform. Everyone was shocked. "What's going on?" The next moment, screech! The sound of friction rang in everyone's ears. It was electronic noise as well as the scraping of metal and wind. "It's from outside the subway. The subway seems to be speeding up." "Damn it. I knew it wouldn't be that simple." The subway was fast, but there was ultimately a limit. Upon realizing that something was wrong, the other trains on the platform quickly received the message and started to pass without stopping and speed up to avoid collision. But it was too late to react. Passing through platforms, leaving the tunnel, the entire subway collided with the one ahead on the track built over the river with an enormous impact. The huge collision caused both subways to undergo alarming deformations. In the already very crowded morning rush hour subway, many people were suffocated and died in an instant. The terrifying impact even caused the subway to derail. The fifth day, although there wasn't enough time to notify the death toll, 2,378 people, because this exact number had appeared on the paper that Suu Kyi found. And at this moment, Suu Kyi was also watching the local news. A major accident happened. The subway lost control and collided with the preceding train. Rescue efforts are underway. The yellow-robed priest's voice trembled. Are we about to enter the next day? Suu Kyi, however, was silently looking at the deep red of the sky dome. He is not dead yet, no need to rush, but according to the information on the paper, the number of deaths represents a certain progress. And I was also wrong about one thing just now. What? The yellow-robed priest was stunned. The redness of the sky dome is not related to the number of days, but to the number of deaths. This time the huge number, it's not the same. That little boy's strength will greatly enhance at this moment. The sky dome was visibly deeper red than before. So, what did you just mention we have to do? The yellow-robed priest asked in a grave voice. Of course, it is to find a way to kill him before his strength is fully unleashed. Suu Kyi spoke lightly. At this very moment, the chosen audience members had not received any serious injuries. After all, they each had bodies and strength beyond ordinary humans. And at this moment, everyone's eyes were urgently fixed on the distance. The subway sank in the water. Though some people were kind and protected a part of the crowd, even after plunging into the water, they utilized their strength to carve out several paths of survival. Yet still, a large number of people died on impact. Where's that little boy? Don't know. But he must not be dead. Otherwise, we would have immediately moved on to the next day. What exactly happened just now? Those people took action to protect us, but at that moment their abilities were blocked. The man in black suddenly fixed his gaze intently on the distance. Look over there. The little boy's body slowly floated up from underwater. And at this moment, though there was a hole pierced through him, the protection from before seemed to have had an effect. There was still a sign of life, and he had not died. He's still alive. Quick! Save him! The crowd also noticed that the sky dome around them had turned a deeper red than before. That unsettling feeling was growing stronger, as if something terrible were about to happen. Since the subject hadn't died, rescue was still possible. And as they were heading toward the little boy, the tracks spanning the long river began to bang, bang, bang against the crumbling iron chains. The nearby overhead tracks even started to crack from the recent impact. Broken stones and metal continuously fell downwards. Damn it! Why is this happening now? Protect the little boy first. People like Yisho wanted to take action, but the man in black suddenly raised his hand to stop them, saying gravely, "Wait a minute, something feels off." Some people stood still, while others charged towards the little boy. Those rushing towards the boy naturally faced the falling debris. But this wasn't a big problem for them, ready to use their own strength to shatter the falling metal pieces. However, someone suddenly felt a change in the complexion. My strength has weakened. The others also began to feel a wave of weakness, as if they had entered a domain where the use of their inner strength was restricted. Someone exclaimed in shock, "No, back off. The closer to that little boy, the more our strength diminishes. My body is as sturdy as refined iron. I should be able to block it." A creature whose body seemed made of iron didn't step back, but approached the little boy instead, just as it swiftly charged and got about 5 meters away from him. The abnormality's expression changed dramatically. A sharp piece of metal had abruptly penetrated its scapula. It turned its head back in fear and looked at its own body, which had become completely ordinary at that moment. Even running had lost its vigor. but it couldn't speak. As a massive amount of dangerous falling debris was still dropping, it stretched out its hand towards the people in horror. Save! But the next word never left its mouth. The abnormality was instantly turned into a porcupine with protrusions. Then it was smashed down into the water by a large amount of rocks. Everyone watched this scene in fear. I had felt it when we first tried to protect, the man in black said solemnly. Now it seems I wasn't wrong. Within a certain range of the little boy, we gradually lose our strength and become ordinary people. The crowd didn't give up. Someone quickly discovered, the protective force seems to be able to resist, to prevent the rapid decrease of strength. But the closer we get, the more points it consumes. Just reaching within 10 meters, it consumes nearly 10,000 per second. Following this trend, to get closer to him, it'll become a terrifying million per second. This number caused a drastic change in many people's expressions. This was undoubtedly a huge risk, and all of this discovery was a bit too late. At that moment, the little boy was floating on the surface of the water, his face obscured by his hair, expressionless, as if he was on the verge of death. The next moment, the little boy was suddenly struck by the falling railway metal, piercing through his entire chest. The crowd saw the river stained red with blood and watched as the sky dome was filled with a deep red. It was when everything was being swallowed that someone saw the little boy slightly lift his head, his eyes revealing a corner from beneath his long hair, showing a mad and eerie smile. You all should die. D. All of you. D. Chapter 305. This is the first type. The sixth day. It was dawn. The group had returned to their original location. There is still half an hour before the little boy leaves his house. Let's head over to that area first, said one of them. Night Guard and the others immediately began to move. However, they noticed the abnormal dark red color of the sky dome, and a strong unease involuntarily rose within their hearts. Soon, they arrived near the old neighborhood. Having been here before, they returned to their original hidden vantage points or corners. Strange. What's wrong? Something's different. Night Guard and Fong Li stood together, frowning deeply. It's too quiet. Indeed. Their eyes narrowed slightly as they looked toward the neighborhood. This neighborhood was old and housed many elderly residents. Previously, when they had visited, plenty of elderly men and women were active in the public areas of the neighborhood, even adjusting the sound system, preparing to dance in the square. But now, there was no movement at all. Something's off. The man in black narrowed his eyes and suddenly looked up toward the roof of a building in the neighborhood. Look! Someone went up there. It was an elderly couple with white hair, who seemed to have difficulty walking and were slow. After climbing up, they slowly moved towards the edge. Under the group's puzzled gaze, they swayed and fell off the edge. Smack! A heavy impact sound followed. Did they commit suicide? The pupils of the group narrowed. It's not just them. The man in black leaped up slowly, landing on the rooftop of the high-rise building, his expression somber as he watched this scene unfold. Probably everyone in the neighborhood is dead. The group looked over. One building had caught fire unexpectedly. The entire structure charred into ruins, with several dozen bodies scattered beneath it in pools of blood. Public areas of the neighborhood also held a cluster of people who had hanged themselves. The causes of death varied. There were accidents, suicides, murders. It's madness. There are even bodies that directly swallowed razor blades. Truly ruthless, Night Guard said, shocked by the scene. What on earth happened here? The blood had already dried somewhat, indicating that these events had happened not long ago. A dense aura of death emanated from the entire neighborhood. The group looked on in silence. I've had a suspicion before. The man in black spoke with a heavy voice. It's always been just an inkling, but now, it seems to be coming true. You mean? Fong Li looked gravely toward the distance. A muffled sound of doors closing was followed by the sound of footsteps descending the stairs. From the dark hallway emerged the little boy with long hair and a backpack. He lowered his head, as if completely indifferent to the surrounding horror, emotionlessly stepping over bodies and blood. All of this is because of this little boy. Wherever he goes, death follows. At this moment, the group also realized something was wrong, or perhaps they felt a strong unease. Everyone's expression turned solemn. They watched the little boy walk amid numerous pools of blood, his thin frame inexplicably giving them chills. "Let's go. Follow him," Tentacle Man said softly. The group moved together. The little boy took the same route to school as always. But this time it was completely different. A sudden gust of wind rose from the ground. The temperature, carrying a chill, spread across the city. Bang! A car accident occurred again. And this time, the accident involved a large vehicle carrying dangerous chemicals. A terrifying explosion flipping the entire street. Countless people wailed. The wind swept through commercial high-rises. Giant billboards along with unfinished building scaffolding fell down. Numerous people looked on in horror, screaming, running. Falling debris directly killed many people and destroyed the entire street's high-voltage power lines. Sparks flew and many people didn't have time to escape, instantly enveloped by a strong electric shock. Instantly, their entire bodies, even their internal organs, were burned to a crisp, and they stiffened as they fell to the ground. Only the little boy, unruffled, calmly walked through this terrifying, chaotic disaster. The group silently watched this unfold, death seeming like a roadside breeze that, once blown, would trigger continuous series of various accidents. We seem to have gotten everything wrong. The guidance from the Eye of Destiny was vague, but this little boy is definitely not someone who needs protection. He brings various deaths and accidents, and it's even more terrifying than before. The previous street had nearly turned into a living hell, and as the little boy calmly walked down the next street, there was still no sign of peace. The recent burst ignited the buildings. Fire blazed up instantly, smoke billowing. Some lost their senses and jumped down in panic, only to kill people below. The strong wind lifted sheets of metal that flew out, randomly slaughtering ordinary people running on the roadside. Bones fragile, flesh and blood scattered. Something's wrong. Everything's wrong. The man in black's eyelids twitched violently. These so-called accidents are all the doings of that little boy, and there was someone not far from the little boy, his face suddenly changing as he looked at his palm. Wait! Why, even though I'm outside the range, do I feel a diminishing of strength? But his expression suddenly changed, because he heard a fierce friction sound behind him. Turning around, he saw highly stretched steel rods from the construction site suddenly breaking free and heading straight for him. Chapter 306. Although his strength was diminished, his body remained above that of an ordinary person, and he had just thought to dodge directly. The next moment, his expression suddenly changed. Unbeknownst to him, he had stepped onto a puddle conducting high-voltage electricity. The terrifying current instantly paralyzed him. He couldn't move at all. Damn! The steel bar pierced directly through his eye. It penetrated his brain and nailed him to the ground. Meanwhile, the little boy had already walked over slowly. He's dead just like that. The onlookers wore solemn expressions. Most of those present were selected by the Eye of Destiny, able to contribute to this struggle. Even as cannon fodder, they could bring information, which was also the reason for being selected by the Eye of Destiny. Act now. Someone with an extremely stern visage rushed forward. We can't let him cause another death. Others had dangerous glints in their eyes. They drew their swords and moved. In an instant, nearly 30 people charged at the little boy together. Many were familiar faces from major influences, and Xinghe and others were among them. So decisive! Everyone was surprised. The man in black was also charging with Fong Li and others. Haven't they realized yet? With every death he causes, the power that causes death strengthens, and at the same time, The range that restricts everyone's abilities also expands. This is terrifying. The speed of death he brings will get faster and faster. If we don't deal with him now, the horror will become extremely dangerous. At this moment, many people finally made accurate judgments, and they started acting decisively and swiftly. Use long-range abilities. No good. Long-range abilities still get restricted once they reach that range. I'll do it. Someone held a long spear, glasses shining bright, and took direct aim at the little boy's head. Bang! The bullet blasted out from the muzzle, instantly reaching the little boy's head in the air. At that moment, the little boy's head was blown apart by the shot. The crowd was slightly stunned. That simple? No, something's wrong. He didn't fall. He didn't die. The little boy stopped walking and slowly raised his head. The gaping hole with flesh flying everywhere was filling up, his wounds quickly recovering. He revealed a sinister countenance and looked around at everyone present. That gaze, like a terrible demon from the Nine Netherworld, made everyone's body involuntarily tremble. But the little boy didn't do anything. He simply continued slowly on the path he had been on before. Why did the attack have no effect? And he could survive that? Wait, look at that person. Someone's voice trembled as they pointed at an office worker in the distance. The same wound as the little boy's appeared on his head. With a thud, he fell to the ground. The others were now trying distant attacks. But without exception, all inflicted wounds would recover in an instant, and would also randomly be borne by nearby ordinary people. The lethal injuries are transferred, using others' lives to substitute his own. His strength would also increase because of death. What exactly is this entity? Everyone felt a chill, not just because of this point. More importantly, they could anticipate what was to come. Death was looming over every one of them. We must find a way to kill him at this very moment. Elsewhere, Su Chi was gently saying, I think I understand now why so many assistants always fail to succeed. Surely someone in the first 5 days would have looked for clues in the little boy's room, but only on the 6th day, something that could kill the little boy appears. And that 6th day would also be the last day. Death will rapidly envelop the entire city at a terrifying pace. Yet there is absolutely no time or opportunity to find a way to kill him. Su Chi's soft words made the yellow-robed priest stunned. What assistant? No, that's not the point. Have you found a way to kill him? Of course. The drawings from the first 5 days were just plain drawings, but from the 6th day on, all curses, all ways of death will reappear massively. He's like a death designer and has already arranged the ending for this city. And then, there's one drawing that's very special. It's stained with the blood of a little boy. Blood? The yellow-robed priest was startled. How come I've never seen it? He had also participated in all the search efforts and had found nothing out of the ordinary. It's because you're just looking and not observing. Of course, he was at fault himself. The blood mixed with the red paint could only be discovered after it actually happened and changed. But once it occurred, it was feared it would have reached the terrifying stage where the little boy's strength bursts forth. The little boy has a habit of self-harm, recreating all the ways of death on himself. This also fit with the various torturous illusions of the 5th layer, where many ways of death had been seen. But the only thing that left self-harm wounds on him was that drawing. So, we can kill the little boy through the way of death in this drawing? The yellow-robed priest murmured. What is the way of death? Su Chi said softly. Collect the blood of 1,444 people. Soak the dagger in it for half an hour, and you will have one chance to deliver a fatal close-range attack, but only one. The yellow-robed priest's voice was a bit hoarse as he spoke gravely. And once you get close, you will lose all your strength and be devoured by a multitude of accidental deaths. There's something else. Su Chi said, I'm afraid there will be an extremely intense psychological collapse when you get close. This was why, in that neighborhood, people had committed suicide, their eyes bloodshot as they took up knives to kill others. The yellow-robed priest murmured. What in the world is that little boy's identity? The ancient beings I know don't have such strange abilities. This is almost an insoluble death trap. The tone of the yellow-robed priest carried a trace of confusion and powerlessness. When had he ever been so downcast that he couldn't even break the trap set by an ancient being? Su Chi's voice was unflustered. Don't panic. What I mentioned is just the normal procedure. What? According to my plan, there are at least 4 ways to kill him. The yellow-robed priest? At this very moment, Su Chi was already rushing on his way, swiftly approaching the location of the little boy. After all the surrounding transportation had long since been paralyzed, and disasters of increasing horror were emerging one after another. He also saw various bursts of chaos in the distance. People were roaring, wanting to kill the little boy, who didn't even dodge, his eerie face staring fixedly at everything around him. A plethora of accidental deaths began to burst forth illogically. Ordinary people were dying like ants, constantly. Everyone die. Take with you the most painful memories in your hearts. And die completely. This was not the little boy speaking, but the terrifying sound resonating in everyone's minds like a spiritual impact. It was like an inducement, yet also like a command. Many ordinary people's eyes appeared to be covered in deep red. Their fleeing footsteps abruptly stopped, and they crashed violently into the sharp metal sheet next to them, piercing their own bodies. The crowd roared again. They had found a method. Protective power. Coupled with the hinge item obtained before, it could inflict damage on him, but often without getting close. They were blocked by various suddenly emerging fatal accidents. Even a moment's carelessness would result in death. The yellow-robed priest watched this scene, murmuring with his mouth agape. Why does this seem so familiar? Memories of the past were recovering, as if there was an impression from ancient times, but it was difficult to remember. However, he was suddenly dumbstruck by Su Chi's action. Wait, what are you doing? Because Su Chi had already initiated the Rubik's Cube. Abilities are not ineffective. But the next moment, a bright protective light flashed on Su Chi's body. He had poured in 1 billion points. The Rubik's Cube was successfully activated. The little boy still maintained his eerie smile, but suddenly the world spun for him. He found himself being pulled in front of a young man. Brother will show you something nice. Su Chi reached out, holding the long sword that was the hinge item, and once again poured 1 billion points directly into it, penetrating with an unstoppable force. The little boy stared blankly as he looked down at Su Chi's long sword piercing his chest, trembling all over, blood flowing non-stop. Su Chi said to himself, "See? This is the first type." Chapter 307 Yellow-Robed Priest. The little boy looked down at the wound that had pierced through him. Pain emanated from the wound. His long hair fluttered slightly, and his complexion grew paler as he bled. Onlookers twitched their faces as they watched this unfold. Nobody had expected that the entity they attacked so frantically and helplessly would be so easily penetrated by a single sword. Was he instantly killed? And Su Chi suddenly withdrew his long sword, stretched out his hand, and pressed it against the little boy's corpse. "What are you doing?" The yellow-robed priest eyed Su Chi's hand reaching out and was taken aback, reacting quickly. "Is that thing you mentioned earlier inside him?" "Yes, it's inside him." Su Chi's method was extremely violent, and he suddenly plunged his hand into the little boy's chest cavity. The yellow-robed priest was stunned. "Shouldn't you have searched that package first? And why do you seem so rushed?" "Because time is tight and the task is critical." The yellow-robed priest didn't understand, but suddenly noticed that the deep red of the sky dome was slowly changing, not dissipating due to the little boy's death, but instead growing thicker. Su Chi violently tore open the chest cavity. This scene made Fong Li and the others twitch. "What is Brother Su doing?" "I don't know. Has he been influenced?" The yellow-robed priest slightly narrowed its eyes, seeing a strange organ inside the little boy's chest cavity. This organ had taken the place of the lung, was abnormally shaped, and though it was crystal clear, was heavily wrapped with blood vessels. "This is the item we were looking for," Su Qi murmured softly. "Just as I thought." He saw a faintly flickering pattern on a delicate part of the organ. It was part of the body of a divine that had been severely coughing in room 1. When Su Qi reached out to take it, the entwined mass of blood vessels reacted violently, boiling as if to prevent Su Qi. Troublesome, but since it's part of his body, being a bit rough shouldn't be a big issue. Su Qi's technique was quick and ruthless. He forcefully pulled. He violently extracted the organ from his body. "This is the first item." At the same time, although the organ was weak, it still emitted a sparkling translucent light. Everyone felt a burst of brilliance. "My points increased?" "Mine too." Directly increased by more than 10 million points. The yellow-robed priest looked at Su Qi. "What about you?" "I gained some points and they multiplied several times." Su Qi looked at a direct 120 billion points. "So you have 100 million now?" "Almost." The yellow-robed priest felt a chill, opened its mouth, then silenced itself, as it was indeed at its weakest stage now, its soul fire barely flickering, as if it would extinguish at any moment. But it was thinking about something. Why would Su Qi give it these 100 million points? You must know. Inside the exchange treasury, there are many valuable items. The worth of 100 million points is nearly incalculable, as long as successful exchange can be made. Thus, Su Qi would possess immense potential. As long as no one kills him, he would rise persistently. And that yellow robe was also in his hands, though he couldn't use it yet. There would come a day. By now, Su Qi had already reaped a massive reward. There was no need to care about it. A weak and useless spirit. Thus, it hesitated to speak. But the next moment, a strange force made the yellow-robed priest tremble slightly. Su Qi directly infused a large amount of points. Protective strength suddenly surged into his entire body. The soul fire in the ring was instantly covered. The yellow-robed priest's face showed shock. "You! Don't space out. Quickly absorb it all." The yellow-robed priest felt very complicated and shaky at this moment. It had always thought of Su Qi as a very troublesome, demon-like special mortal, but now he was giving away 100 million points, bankrupting himself, for the recovery of its strength. Such action was like winning 100 million but donating it all. It felt moved and guilty. After all, its origin was questionable, using Su Qi to go to the temple to recover itself, and now given such a grand gift. "Su Buxian, I swear I will remember this favor. And once I recover my strength, I guarantee you will gain even greater opportunity in the future." It clenched its teeth and began to absorb. The soul fire suddenly surged more vigorously than before. "Very good. But don't wait for the future. Do it now." Su Qi had already prepared to retreat. Because, although the little boy's body was already lying on the ground, the massive blood vessels inside his body roared crazily, tangling towards the surrounding corpses. Everyone's sight slightly trembled. What's going on? The yellow-robed priest was also slightly stunned. He's not dead. Normal, whether in anime or games, some big bosses, after being beaten in one form, transform and enter another shape. Su Qi calmly watched this scene. A fierce wind swept through. The deep red of the sky dome seemed to blanket everything. Everyone felt a chilling sensation in their hearts, as if some terrifying, dreadful creature was about to be unleashed. A mass of blood vessels spread, entwining like tentacles around various corpses, with blood flowing back into them. The little boy's body was slowly propped up. A large number of blood vessels in the chest cavity were pulsating. A terrifying aura seeped inch by inch from within. At this moment, with the soul fire robustly flaring, the yellow-robed priest looked at this scene a bit dazedly. Why is his strength still increasing, and why do I feel this aura is somewhat familiar? Chapter 308. Normal. Su Qi looked at the crystal-clear lung organ in his hand. It consumed strength to suppress it, but once I got hold of it, the part of the strength that was doing the suppression was liberated, As for the familiar aura, boom! Thunderous roars engulfed the deep red clouds of the sky dome. Countless fierce winds assailed the city in their entirety. Ordinary people in the surrounding blocks, their eyes turned red, filled with despair. They began to engage in mass collective suicide, jumping off buildings, slitting wrists, stabbing others, then killing themselves. And at this moment, the little boy's second form had finally emerged, his body wrapped layer upon layer by thick blood vessels. Every vein as thick as 3 meters rapidly expanded. Like a giant beast, it rampantly demolished the adjacent buildings, devouring vast amounts of rubble, as well as the corpses of the deceased, transforming into a massive existence like a blood demon. What's more, there was an awe that one couldn't look directly at. It emitted from its body. Even more crucial was a dark red totem, spinning and sparkling in the sky dome, casting its light upon the blood demon below. This is. The yellow-robed priest stared blankly at the totem, feeling that horrifying aura. It was all too familiar. After all, the entire anxious land was suppressing this terrifying existence. That's right. This little boy, Su Chi spoke softly, is actually the god of anxiety. The priest's soul suddenly trembled violently. All of its emotions would reflect upon the soul fire, and at this moment, it felt true panic rising from the depths of its heart. A dread and awe. It shakily contracted its soul fire in a panic, hurriedly scanning its surroundings. Brother Huang, what are you looking for? Let little Su help you look. The yellow-robed priest roared furiously. What do you think I'm looking for? Of course, it's a way to escape. Forget it. There's only one way out. Su Chi lifted his head to look at the blood demon. Right here. Su Buxian. You? It gritted its teeth furiously. You knew about this all along, didn't you? Yes. Such forthrightness. The yellow-robed priest was taken aback. But was it of any use? That was the god of anxiety. Don't rush. Don't be afraid. Even if it is the god of anxiety, because it was suppressed, only the tip of the iceberg of its power has seeped through, just a drop in the ocean. Stop spewing idioms. The yellow-robed priest clenched its teeth in anger. Even weakened, it remains a terrifying existence. You have no idea about the danger of the god of anxiety. No wonder the earlier sight of mass deaths, suicides seemed so familiar. Now it fully recalled it all. Once before, the god of anxiety descended upon the ancient battlefield. Countless people crumbled. Those who a second before stood united fist in fist, willing to withstand the abyss, turned on each other the next second, forcibly becoming the most gruesome chapter of history. The deaths brought by the god of anxiety were engraved deeply into memory, to the bone. No one could not be wary of such an existence. At that moment, everyone suddenly roared a caution. Be careful! All of the blood demon's veins suddenly contracted and shot toward the people with rapid force. Their faces turned pale with fear. They scattered in evasion. Su Chi did not take the hit head-on but leaped slightly backward. The ground where he stood was smashed into a huge pit. This was not just a physical brawl. Wherever the veins touched, all signs of life were devoured in mere moments. Nobody chicken out. Su Chi spoke lightly. Its veins can be destroyed. Look closely, there are blood clots inside. Target those clots. That's the goddamn core. The yellow-robed priest really wanted to retort, but nobody moved an inch. Su Buxian. The man in black looked towards Su Chi's figure and said in a grave voice, It's not that we don't want to attack. We are currently restricted. You won't be. Su Chi tucked away the translucent organ. You're now immune to those restrictions. The moment the first item was secured, it wasn't just points that were replenished. Everyone had also received some new buffs. Their strength would no longer be restricted. Their combat powers were also unsealed at this moment. I've tried it, it's true. Then let's get to it. Someone was already charging into action. Because the only points are on that monster right in front of us. We have no choice but to face this bizarre entity. and the worst-case scenario is death. The yellow-robed priest sighed as he watched the scene unfold. Is this the new generation of youngsters? Truly a bunch of ignorant mortals fearless as calves at their first tiger. Everyone was taking action. No one was holding back their strength. After all, you get what you give. That's what makes the trial the fairest place. Fong Li and Night Watcher Tentacle Man were among the three in action. Brother Su. It's no problem to join forces and destroy the blood vessels. But who the hell is going to draw its attention up front? Terrifying power burst forth from within his blood demon. A burst from the chest cavity would spray red light similar to lasers. Anywhere it swept over would be reduced to ruins. Ordinary people around were running away frantically. One strike would tear flesh from bone, eroding away, turning into a deep red mist, drifting up to the sky dome. No one could attack. They could only evade. Don't panic. Leave the front to me, Su Chi said lightly. The yellow-robed priest suddenly remembered something, his voice trembling. You didn't spend your points on me just for this moment, did you? He had just managed to recover some of his soul power, only to have it drained. Don't worry, I told you before, didn't I? I have 4 ways to kill it. Su Chi smiled. I don't need you yet. What did he mean by yet? The yellow-robed priest didn't even have time to ask. Brother Hai Xing, Brother Cat. Su Chi took out a conch shell. He activated its power. It's your turn to enter the fray. The next moment, Brother Hai Xing, clad only in underwear, with a little cat sitting on his shoulder, appeared in the middle of the arena. The blood demon, incarnated by the god of anxiety, seemed to sense something and shifted its attention here. Fury uncontrollably erupted. The terrifying aura exploded in an instant. Although it's oozing power, it still possesses hatred, it seems. Su Chi watched as the blood fury value rose. Brother Hai Xing had been captured. Brother Cat had even destroyed its energy hub, and he himself had just stabbed its chest cavity. Boom! The blood demon's blood vessel tentacles erupted, spraying deep red light. Boom, boom, boom. It surged towards Su Chi and the others, as well as everyone in the vicinity. The faces of the crowd darkened as they burst forth with combat power to resist. But Su Chi took a step forward, refusing to retreat, his figure surging forward with an aggressive charge. Let's go, let him see the power of our trio. The next moment, Brother Hai Xing also chuckled and raised his elbow over his head. Let's go. Although he hadn't transformed and even looked somewhat clumsy and unstable, he miraculously dodged wave after wave of death rays. Brother Cat, too, jingling his bell, made the attack of the blood vessels falter with a meow. They both had been eroded by the power of the god of anxiety. But their physiques were so exceptional that even the god of anxiety couldn't defeat them. Now, they were counteracting it. Boom! The death beam of the blood demon erupted, even more massive and fierce. I've got this. Su Chi raised his hand to unleash a fire dragon, calling forth a protective power that roared in collision with it. If that wasn't enough, there was more. The ancient god's heart throbbed wildly, and the dark side of the spiritual weapon manifested, directly reflecting the death ray back. Our target is there. Su Chi looked at the blood demon. Its body was made up of numerous blood vessels, through which you could see all kinds of filth flowing, but only a portion circulated through its body, focused around a little boy's chest cavity, creating a brain-like core organ. To destroy it would require several complex steps. But Su Chi glanced at Brother Hai Xing and Brother Cat, who were goofing off with glee, and said, "It seems there's no need to explain. Let's just kill it directly." Hey! Meow! Chapter 309. This is our fiery combo move. They charged ahead, stepping through bombardments of arteries and ashes, soaring high, heading towards the blood demon. Bang! 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 Buildings around crumbled like pieces of paper. All structures were corroded and shattered in an instant, continuously collapsing one after another. Even for inanimate objects, The power of the god of anxiety wields an unreasonable restraint. Many ordinary people were still desperately trying to escape, unable to get out of range, and the affected ones turned against each other with blood-red eyes. The thunderous death beams were destroying everything. Meanwhile, everyone was striving to restrain and attack other arteries, reducing their strength. Kill! They roared, bursting forth all their potential. Some did not hold back their tens of millions of points, as the power of protection enveloped their entire bodies. The more one gives, the more one receives. Holding onto these millions of points in hand is not as good as using them to get a greater return. Here it comes. Su Chi leaped through the air. The closer he got to the blood demon, the more terrifying the accidents around him became. A high-voltage power line whipped past with a swish, carrying a piercing, electrifying light. There were also billboards blown by the strong winds and numerous fallen street lamp poles. In the disrupted air current, there was a mixture of abundant metal fragments. These were not mere physical damages. Mixed with the power of the god of anxiety and the lingering strength of the blood demon, once hit, one would suffer corrosive damage. Patrick took a deep breath. His entire body of starfish unreasonably expanded, then began to spin wildly. His body transformed into a spiral shape in just a brief moment. Patrick's spiral impact. Patrick started spinning. He directly destroyed all the surrounding deadly accidents and blocked them back. Su Chi's eyelid twitched. This was Patrick's unique physique, exceeding standards, logic, and playing by its own rules. Boom! The blood demon's burst of the death beam struck again. Meow! Brother Cat leaped high, opening his mouth to engulf the beam directly. The traits of the elemental devouring beast were also exerting their strong influence. With the help of the two, Su Chi flew straight towards the blood demon, his hand raising the thunder hammer high and directly smashing the approaching artery away. At that moment, the blood demon seemed unconcerned. The deep red around it crazily diffused around itself, forming terrifying ripples like a shield around it. Every building and metal that came close vanished in an instant. It also demonstrated that the true core of the blood demon was extremely frail and needed protection. Brother Huang understood. At this moment, the yellow-robed priest, recovering his soul power, emanated his strength from the ring. "Break it for me!" Old Huang, when facing the god of anxiety, did not hide any of his capabilities. He quickly explained what he could contribute, as if mere death was not the issue, but being killed by the god of anxiety. That would turn him into the same as every layer of the city, the anxious land, those life forms, corrupted into its followers, suffering eternally and ceaselessly. And old Huang's ability was simple. It was limit-breaking. Just consuming his soul power, he could break any limits. The scope of this limitation included various temple seals, protective rituals, or the seals on items, which also explained why old Huang could defect everywhere and even use divine artifacts. Moreover, more importantly, could even break human limitations, shattering constraints, potential limits, but equally, this limit breaking was permanent, and the required sacrifice was also enormous. At this very moment, the wave of the soul fire formed a vortex, tearing a massive hole directly through the ripples. Su Chi, along with Patrick and Brother Cat, directly approached the blood demon. The greatest danger of the blood demon is that it absorbs all the diffused blood mist in the air, on the ground, in the sky dome, and it releases dead energy. It will grow larger and larger, and its core will gradually become inaccessible. Falling into it, it becomes a massive, terrifying body. At that time, destroying it would be exceedingly difficult. "Let's finish this quickly," bellowed the yellow-robed priest. "No problem." Su Chi activated the ancient relic, and behind him, a slightly flickering phantom with wings appeared. Fallen Angel, activated again. He had already gained the indomitable strength against items below the legendary level. The protecting strength, combined with the wings behind him, made the long sword in Su Chi's hand burst forth with a surge of light again. At the same time, the blood demon looked up high. In the sky dome, the deep red, anxious strength suddenly formed a vortex that gathered fiercely. The deep red strength quickly converged. In front of the blood demon, a vast, chaotic energy orb formed from the interlaced strengths. Its diameter reached 100 meters. Everyone's hair stood on end, their expressions filled with fright at this sight. What on earth is this ghostly existence? Su Buxian, the yellow-robed priest, also warned in a deep voice. I see it. Su Qi raised his head, but he didn't stop moving. I feel like getting hit by this thing would probably leave me black and blue. Brother Hai Xing, Brother Cat. At this very moment, both Hai Xing and Cat had already built up their strength. Boom, boom, boom. Both of them changed their forms simultaneously. Their gigantic figures instantly covered everyone's view with shadows. The giant starfish instantly surpassed the size of the blood demon. Brother Cat also opened his big mouth. Countless tentacles burst forth, like heavenly girls scattering flowers, sweeping towards that giant energy mass. At this moment, Brother Hai Xing and Brother Cat, along with everyone's protective strength, burst forth, stubbornly blocking all the surging strength gathered by the blood energy and the various death beams exploding from the blood vessel tentacles. Even though the blood demon was still gathering, still surging and churning with strength, they were forced back for at least 5 seconds. And these 5 seconds were enough for Su Qi. Under the protecting strength, the thunder hammer induced a massive amount of electricity to light up. The indomitable effect also burst forth. The invincible BGM effect subtly activated. The ancient god's heart burst forth, and the combat attribute randomly selected. Tenacity, which wasn't very useful at the moment, only activating when the vitality dropped to 1, making him immune to all damage for about 10 seconds. Su Qi explosively broke through numerous blood vessel tentacles. Even the intercrossing death beams couldn't touch him at all. Brother Hai Xing roared. His massive body and the terrifying strength of his mouth organs caused the entire area's ground to shake and split. Brother Cat's numerous tentacles burst forth, clearing the way for Su Qi. The blood demon seemed to feel the deadly threat too. The numerous blood vessels suddenly thickened, forming invincible barriers in front. The yellow-robed priest's expression changed slightly. What do we do? Not much to do. Su Qi didn't hesitate and slammed down the thunder hammer with the indomitable effect activated. Just charge through and that's it. Bang, bang, bang. Layer upon layer of blood membrane barriers were shattered. But simultaneously, the angel's single wing behind Su Qi was slowly dissipating over time. The indomitable effect was about to disappear. Bang! Su Qi's figure plunged into the core area of the blood demon. At this moment, a little boy covered in numerous blood vessels, his eyes coldly staring at Su Qi. That terrifying aura now had the momentum of the god of anxiety, horror, and death swirling around him. But at this moment, the little boy actually smiled. He revealed a sinister smile. Look, he's actually smiling. Su Qi raised an eyebrow. The priest's soul fire, not knowing when, had shrunk back, shivering. I'm not looking. I'm not looking. This was indeed the true god of anxiety. Even just appearing as a little boy, it was somewhat cowed. And just then, it made a move that Su Qi had not expected. The numerous blood vessel tentacles didn't attack Su Qi. Instead, they suddenly turned towards itself. Suicide? Chapter 310. The Only Chance. Suicide. The blood vessels acted without hesitation, penetrating the little boy himself, and without any surprise, he vomited blood and died with a cold gaze in that moment. At the same time, the brain-like core, its numerous blood vessels were rapidly withering. Did it commit suicide? Asked the yellow-robed priest, stunned. Why? Su Qi silently watched the scene unfold. The little boy was lifeless, and simultaneously, the second item, the brain core, also fell to the ground. The god of anxiety, indeed different from the others. An unconventional move. Su Qi picked up the brain core and softly said, There are 2 possibilities. One is because, after seeing me, It was so intimidated by my regal aura that it killed itself out of fear and shame. The other is, it wanted to cause a big scene too. The surrounding blood fog was flashing crazily. The power of anxiety was entwining within. Deep red descended from the sky dome, coming from all directions. Everyone watched this scene, and almost without time to escape, and with no way out, they were swallowed into it. Every time it loses a core item, the power used to seal it releases. Apart, Su Qi observed the surrounding crimson. And from the current situation, the trend of power increase is clearly incremental. In other words, the first time it was 0.1%, next time 1%, 10%, and by the last item it would probably reach 100%. Of course, this refers only to the minor power of the god of anxiety. Its true essence is still suppressed within the entirety of the anxious land. Next will be the true power of the god of anxiety. The entire city, whether the sky dome or the ground, or everything surrounding, was all deep red, like a filter, filled with infinite anxiety. In the city, a red apparition was slowly rising. It slowly opened its red eyes, which seemed to gaze at every person in the city like those from the Nine Netherworld. All ordinary people seeing this were dazed, their vision filled with red. Countless people staggered expressionlessly and slowly walked towards rooftops, slowly picking up kitchen knives, slowly jumping off from the edge of the subway. The entire city is enveloped. Anxiety and death are everywhere. The yellow-robed priest whispered in fear, "Fuck! This is the terror of the god of anxiety." At that moment, the brain core in Su Qi's hand emitted light, rushing towards everyone, with most of it moving towards Su Qi. The points increased again, now multiplied by 5. And there was a new buff. Void's Serenity. Use points to enhance all your skills. The previous protection only enhanced rule-based counterforce, but now it's a genuine enhancement of strength. This was normal. The power the god of anxiety had unsealed was already too great for anyone to resist. Only with newly added support could there be a fighting chance. However, just then, Su Buxian, "Can you hear me?" A familiar voice reached Su Qi's ears. "Doli, it's me. I didn't expect you to have already obtained the second item." The tone unmistakably filled with shock and joy. At that moment, Doli was using the stethoscope, that is, the power of the Eye of Destiny, to communicate with Su Qi. "Now you can leave. After all, the next step is the extensive unsealing of the god of anxiety's extraordinary power. But don't worry about it. I can guide you to our place to return those 2 items. The sealing strength will be able to recover, suppressing it once again." It was a bit excited. After all, this was a glimmer of hope in sight. Su Qi suddenly interrupted it. "The approach is good, but something is not right." Doli paused, slightly startled. "What do you mean?" Since the beginning, Su Qi had been staring at the massive phantom in front of him, with displaying several characters. "It is waiting to gather strength. The god of anxiety seems to be plotting something. What can you see on your side?" Doli looked towards the bell ringer. "We can only see the other layers of the anxious land here. All the layers of the anxious land were still occupied by deep red and black fog, boiling madly, the same as the changes during the previous riot. But the bell ringer was beside him, frowning deeply, his gaze penetrating everything, looking towards the monitor's image. His face slightly changed. "Not right. All deep red and black fog, penetrating the barriers of each layer, are pouring into the last layer." Doli's pupils shrank sharply as he stood up, hoarsely said, "What did you say?" The anxious land, in order to protect the weak and suppress, is divided into 9 layers. Each layer has an unbreakable seal that divides its strength. But now, it had been breached. Had the anxious land already been eroded, full of holes? Doli's face bellowed lowly. "This god of anxiety is gathering strength, trying to break the suppression seal. Don't panic," the bell ringer said gravely. "There is still time." Su Buxian, you must send those core items back to here. Within 1 hour, we can maintain the balance and suppression before the ceiling breaks. But Su Qi did not agree. He looked at the whole deep red sky dome, being in the deepest part, more clearly aware of the current situation. I have some bad news for you, he said softly. Only half an hour left until the seal is broken. Doli and the bell ringer were like being hit by a sledgehammer. Impossible. How would you know? Consider it guidance from the eye of destiny. Su Qi skipped the question marks, but clearly those few words held authority for both of them. Both of their faces turned slightly pale. If that was the case, their counteraction plan was completely ruined. All their hopes were also destroyed. Have you been muted? Why aren't you speaking? Su Qi's voice came from the other side, along with noisy wind and various explosion sounds. After all, the god of anxiety wouldn't just stand there idly. It had already started a deadly riot the moment they connected. Doli's veins bulged. Shut up. I'm freaking thinking of a way. Now truly dancing on the blade's edge. Half an hour's time. They could only look for other methods. At this moment, the bell ringer's face was extremely grave. There's no other way. The only chance for a solution is to kill the incarnation of the god of anxiety. That little boy was an incarnation of the weak strength of the god of anxiety, but also bore the will of the god of anxiety, possessing its extraordinary traits. Those who gained an audience could only unleash its third form at best. Now only they could rely on them. He looked at Doli, hoarsely said, I will burn all my soul power to send you there. By then you can temporarily merge those several items. You can obtain divine power. Doli's face changed. But you will die. This is the only chance. Only you can withstand that divine power, the bell ringer said gravely. It's decided then, no time to hesitate. He reached out his hand. Soul fluctuations were bursting forth. Doli opened his mouth, but fell into silence. No longer spoke. This was indeed the only chance. And just as they were about to make their move, Su Qi's voice gently came through. Actually, no need to rush. There's something I forgot to tell you about, that third form of the god of anxiety you just mentioned. He looked ahead. The raging yellow-robed priest, dressed in a yellow robe, frantically burning his own soul, fighting the phantom with the terrifying power of the yellow robe, is about to be killed. Chapter 311, The Birth of the Buxian God. Boom! A massive explosion thundered violently. Half of the city was smashed into a huge crater by a blood-red fist. The power of the blood-red phantom was majestic like a rainbow. Massive blood vessels erupted from within the city. They rose directly to the sky and connected with the sky dome. A large number of corpse creatures turned into blood-skin monsters were produced from these blood vessels and attacked all living beings. Kill! The crowd roared as they charged through the city, sweeping these monsters away and seeking to destroy these blood-colored pipelines, using all their strength to weaken everything that influenced the power of the blood-red phantom. They had to go all out, wishing to exchange for something that could change their fate, the prerequisite being to survive. Yet, at the center of the area covered with blood red, was a yellow heaven disconnected and dissonant from the surrounding blood red. An old yellow, laden with twisted strength, stood in confrontation with the phantom. A yellow-robed priest, wearing yellow robes, was the initiator of this power, with soul fire burning wildly. Boom, boom, boom. The energy ball of death that god of anxiety's second form had just gathered was now suspending in large numbers above the city. These terrifying energy balls were filled with mottled and bursting deep red color. The yellow-robed priest was also exhibiting his mighty divine power at this moment. His yellow robes scattered and danced. His entire figure was flashing with astonishing light. On one side was the protective strength provided by Su Qi, roughly 10 billion points, while on the other, the yellow-robed priest was burning his own soul at this moment. The price for using yellow robe was the same as before. The bursting power was naturally extraordinary. Brother Huang, Keep it up. Su Chi stood on the rooftop of a high-rise building, gesturing and waving his hand. The yellow-robed priest's face twitched, and then he roared as he charged towards the blood-red phantom. Go to hell. I'ma crush you to death. You've dug your grave by messing with me. Soul fire recovery. It's for me to handle this crap. Fuck. As the yellow-robed priest clashed with God of Anxiety's phantom. His mouth was mixed with swearing and angry words, as if venting his resentment. Su Chi murmured to himself. Seems like Brother Huang has a grudge against God of Anxiety. Such heavy resentment. However, it's not a big problem. With Brother Huang's trait and his understanding of Yellow Robe, he had pretty much gotten the hang of it. Although the deep red phantom was still launching attacks, it was actually on the verge of peril. But that wasn't the end. The final form of God of Anxiety was about to emerge. Its real power was about to burst. And by then, even if old Huang was drained dry, he likely couldn't defeat the other party. Su Chi held the brain core in his hand and asked softly, "What did you mean by divine power a moment ago?" The heavy voice from Doli responded, "The brain core in your hand has the traits to merge and absorb everything. Originally, we thought when I got here, I'd merge with other organs and use the divine power within to confront God of Anxiety. So that's how it is. God of Anxiety also used this move before, but it didn't seem to be strengthened at that time." Su Chi looked at the brain core. This was why he had seen God of Anxiety's massive blood vessels previously, which could absorb various objects around to strengthen itself. The bell ringer spoke. Its power is contrary to ours, and it can't exert much. Moreover, everything here is an illusion, its own power. It can only strengthen by absorbing things with energy, value, sequence, etc. The bell ringer said softly, "Of course, the user must also have a body capable of bearing the power. Otherwise, upon reaching the limit, it will instead be consumed." Su Chi nodded. "Got it. Anything else I should take note of?" The bell ringer replied. "When using it, connect your own blood to the brain core. When absorbing other things, be conscious of your own limits." "Wait a moment." Doli's tone halted slightly, puzzledly saying, "Why are you telling him all this?" The bell ringer calmly said, "Can't you see he wants to merge with the brain core himself, to control the divine power and confront that God of Anxiety? But he's a mere mortal. He has the protective strength and is currently the person with the most points on the field, and the source of the protective strength, I presume you know very well, enough for him to control the power without collapsing." Su Chi gave a thumbs up. "Smart guy." Doli stood there dumbfounded. It said somewhat uncertainly, "Wait, but shouldn't we be more reliable doing this?" The bell ringer shook his head. "We just took a chance. But in reality, the Eye of Destiny's odds of winning are extremely low, only 1%. Doli's heart sank. The Eye of Destiny judged many things and made predictions. It had thought the odds would be low, not anticipating them to be terrifyingly low. As for Su Chi, the bell ringer didn't elaborate, as the Eye of Destiny did not provide any related predictions for Su Chi. It asked, "Su Buxian, how many points do you have now?" "You don't know?" Su Chi was somewhat surprised. Doli shook its head, whispering, "The strength from protection and these points are actually incarnations of the traits and rules of that supreme being. Naturally, we can't peep into it, and because of this, the entire anxious land has an unchangeable trial system." "That supreme being," Su Chi murmured lightly. "We all respectfully refer to it as Master of the Present World." Both entities did not conceal anything. In the current situation they had nothing to hide, as all hope lay in Su Chi. Master of the Present World. Huh? Chapter 312. This title is extremely significant, as after all, the confrontation between the present world and the abyss had persisted for hundreds of years. Su Chi muttered to himself, "No wonder the power of protection can confront the God of Anxiety. No wonder it could suppress the traits and rules of the God of Anxiety. In short, the more points you have, the more power you can devour and withstand." the bell ringer said gravely. You need at least 20 million points to merge with the brain core, then merge with other things, until you can confront the power of the avatar of the god of anxiety. 20 million, huh? Suchi muttered. Dolly's face darkened. You don't have even 20 million spent now, do you? I do, plenty of it. Suchi spoke softly, his gaze slowly shifting towards the brain core before him. He had roughly understood the method to defeat the god of anxiety, which was nothing more than using the divine power of the core object to confront the god of anxiety. But how to operate it, he no longer needed to listen to their suggestions. At this moment, the yellow-robed priest grew increasingly formidable. Even as the soul fire burned rapidly, he brutally shattered the phantom shadow of the god of anxiety. He also felt exhilarated. Joking. This was the legendary god of anxiety. Even if it was just an avatar, even if it had just a trace of power. But it was the will of the god of anxiety. Such a terrifying existence in the ancient battlefield of old. Now, however, he had beaten it down himself. How could he not be thrilled? Although he had borrowed the divine power of the yellow-robed master, although he had also spent the soul power he had barely recovered, it was worth it for these few brilliant minutes. He believed it was very worthwhile, extremely thrilling. God of anxiety, he laughed loudly. This is my final strength, but it's about enough. His entire soul fire burst forth. The last of his strength triggered the twisted fluctuations of the yellow robe. The power of his traits charged towards the deep red phantom. Remember, the one who reseals you here is me, Mr. Huang. Boom! With a thunderous collision, the entire deep red phantom was completely shattered. The third form of the phantom was destroyed. Everyone cheered. Suchi also waved his hand. What you just said was so cool, Brother Huang. It was a natural expression. Yes, I saw the air of a king on your face. But it would have been even better if you could have shown your face just now. Suchi looked at old Huang. The power of the yellow robe covered old Huang's face and soul layer by layer, inside and out. There's no need for that. The yellow-robed priest gestured with his hand. I'm not the type who likes to reveal myself. Next time I have a chance to fight with it, I will offer my name. All right. Putting being afraid of being opened so modestly. But the yellow-robed priest looked around, his brow slightly furrowing. Why has the gateway summoned by the temple not appeared yet? The yellow-robed priest looked around curiously at this moment. He still had some soul power left. The greatest crisis had already been resolved, and he had escaped his weak, endangered state. And most importantly, he had also taken back the yellow long robe. At this exact moment, it was the best opportunity to flee. But now, he did not see a way to leave. Suchi said, because... He slowly lifted his head to look at the vast deep red above. This is not over yet. The yellow-robed priest was startled. A strong sense of anxiety suddenly overwhelmed him. And the next moment, bang! The recently shattered phantom had already merged with all the deep red twists in the sky dome. Everything was breaking. Everything was changing. The city and countless ordinary people were disappearing like illusions. Everyone could only feel that they were truly being pulled. Vast volumes of deep red, like waves from all sides, came rushing in, pouring like a great flood to submerge the world. Damn! He trembled with fear. Weren't we already finished just now? Why is there still such power? The yellow-robed priest trembled slightly, because he had already felt a terrifying pressure that he could not resist. Yet the people with the protecting power were able to withstand it. Some trembled slightly, lifting their heads to look up. Look at the sky. What is that? Among the endless deep red galaxies, there was a massive coffin, bundled and sealed with countless nails and iron chains, vast like a planet, outside the sky dome, floating at the center of the deep red sea. At the same time, one could see many chains twinkling like starlight extending from the deep red sea, connecting to countless temples, with various huge divine beast sculptures also pulling on all the iron chains. This is... The yellow-robed priest's pupils shrank sharply. His teeth chattered slightly. The coffin that truly seals the god of anxiety. Su Qi's voice came, "Brother Huang, don't be stunned. Didn't you just say you wanted another chance to fight? Well, now the opportunity is here." Yellow-robed priest? His soul fire trembled. He growled low, "Stop joking. I was just bluffing just now." It was clear old Huang was truly panicked. He even admitted it directly. However, his panic was normal, because that planet-like floating massive coffin had already been pried open at one corner, allowing a slight gap to show. And most importantly, in front of everyone, the figure of a young boy appeared again. He lowered his head. His long hair covered his face. He slowly extended his hand. The next moment, a colossal, bloodied and fleshy hand swept out from the sky dome toward them, threatening to obliterate them. F***CK. What the hell is this thing? At this moment, everyone trembled, their minds heavily shocked. Even though they had protective strength to keep their sanity intact despite the scene, some still felt tremendous fear, as if they were on the verge of collapsing. And at the same time, the surrounding temples and numerous divine beast totems were flashing wildly, as if sensing the upheavals of the god of anxiety. A force seemed to stir, directly descending in front of the people. A pathway appeared. "It's the temple. They're giving us a way to escape. Let's go. We are no match for this entity." Everyone clenched their teeth, under the oppression of the overwhelming strength. They immediately headed toward the temple pathway. Yishou and Fengli, among others, didn't leave immediately. They were about to shout for Su Qi. The next moment, they only felt a force pushing them in. The yellow-robed priest, using up the last of his soul fire, was resisting that last palm strike. Nearby, Patrick and Brother Cat were also exerting all their strength to resist. Of course, they could only hold on for about 15 seconds. He roared, "We need to go too. Brother Huang, don't you get it?" Su Qi's voice made the yellow-robed priest startle. He softly spoke, every word clear. "The entire anxious land is now in grave danger. The god of anxiety is about to break free. Now, running, where can we run to?" Yellow-robed priest's heart jerked violently. He had already realized something when he saw the massive coffin and the gap. Now, sealing the coffin felt more like receiving a death sentence notification. "Su Buxian?" The yellow-robed priest's voice suddenly lost its fear, but slowly came through. "You go. I can send you away directly. Let you leave the anxious land." Su Qi was slightly surprised. "Brother Huang, what are you saying?" The yellow-robed priest stood in midair, with a bitter smile and a bit of resignation. "I still hid a part of the soul power. Originally, I wanted to escape myself. But now, you go." Su Qi paused slightly. "This touching. In my life, I made many crazy and dangerous moves, never feeling guilty. But now, if I let you, a young guy, die here, I'd feel a slight discomfort." The yellow-robed priest could still smile at this. Of course, only a slight one. Su Qi wanted to say more. But the yellow-robed priest didn't give him the chance, because there really wasn't enough time. "Anyway, now the chance is yours. Su Buxian, go!" Using the last of his strength, he burst forth, tearing a rift in space. It was an extraordinary explosion. It seemed he had indeed prepared for a long time. But Su Qi put his hand on his shoulder. "I'm saying don't rush." With a gentle press, he instantly suppressed all the explosive force and the colossal palm crashing down from the sky dome. The yellow-robed priest watched this scene in dumbfounded amazement. Looking back, Su Qi had a terrifying aura around him, protective strength combined with divine power, emitting an intolerable brilliant light. Standing before you is Dr. Su, specialized in difficult and complex diseases, speedrunner of the anxious land, Captain Jack of the Black Pearl, the last ode of the deep Red Sea, and, Su Qi softly said, the temporary god of the hustlers. Chapter 313 God Bushian's Great Battle Against the Restless God. At this moment, deep Red Sea, endless waves. With a loud bang, the newly formed temple passage was shattered. The last passage was gone. And now, there were only Su Chi and his few companions here, as well as the little boy in the distance, bowing his head, his movements unclear. What did you just talk about? Something about the hustlers, what god? The yellow-robed priest muttered. It wasn't that he hadn't heard clearly. In fact, it was because he heard too clearly that he was confused and didn't understand. How had this guy become so divine? A single slap had shattered the immense palm strike that he couldn't have blocked for long no matter how hard he tried. Casually, effortlessly, what had happened to this guy? At this moment, the aura emanating from Su Chi's body was giving him an inexplicable feeling of oppression. And remember, his own soul's quality was at the level of a demigod. And now he was even adorned with the yellow robe. One must be worthy to wear the yellow robe. It wasn't just something to be said. Yet now, he had the feeling he was facing a true god, something many lower gods did not possess. This presence. Su Chi also saw the baffled look on the yellow-robed priest, and he knew the shock and doubt in his heart. Actually, he too had not anticipated such a seamless integration. The brain core, along with the god of anxiety, unlocked all its strength, discarding the other three items, amassing divine power within my body, which would become extremely violent. But the ancient god's heart and the evil god's eyes, together with the angel wings and the protective power, somehow kept it all under control, although it wasn't his own strength, merely harnessed and used. But now, Su Chi felt good. All right, Su Chi said. If you can't figure it out, then don't bother. Go play to the side. The yellow-robed priest. It indeed could no longer make sense of it, and could only step back a few paces, joining Patrick and the cat in withdrawing from the battlefield. Their strength seemed formidable to ordinary people, but here, they were just small fries. By the way, is this thing of any help to you? The yellow-robed priest suddenly paused, pointing at the yellow robe he wore. Su Chi's gaze lingered briefly. The power of an outer god, huh? You don't need it now? The yellow-robed priest coughed and unraveled it. Take it. I've saved a lot of soul power. His soul fire was 100 times more vibrant than what he had previously revealed. Su Chi's eyelids twitched. Huang Xilang, you're really crafty, eating up so many kickbacks. But Su Chi felt reassured. He had calculated the excess protective power he had given, which wasn't much, just to prevent old Huang from running away. Although he hadn't expected old Huang to do such a thing at the last moment. This guy, clearly absorbed more, used less, not only thrashed the phantom, but also embezzled a big portion. This guy had something up his sleeve. At this moment, although watching the yellow-robed priest and the others retreat, Su Chi's surroundings continued to be bombarded with various terrifying, immense death meteors. Only he blocked them all. Amidst the clash of powers, the thunderous sound was deafening, causing continuous tremors that shattered everything around. On the contrary, at the center, Su Chi and the little boy remained motionless, seemingly very calm. The little boy tilted his head to look at the young man before him. His dark eye corners were filled with a lifeless aura. His pupils under his long hair appeared almost a grayish-white, eerily abnormal. Su Chi also tilted his head toward the little boy. God of anxiety, hello? I am God Bushian. So it is. His voice was hoarse, not matching his appearance at all, as if he had not spoken in a very long time, and each word he spoke made the blood waves around him surge wildly and shatter the ears with its piercing crash. A mortal vessel harnessing the power of all gods. How unexpected. His tone did not change, as if he had decayed. Su Chi wasn't in a hurry to attack, even though he had only 20 minutes left before the other could break free. He was still getting used to the power. Although his body was suppressing the outbursts, it felt like he had suddenly gained several new organs. Su Chi needed to become proficient, to learn. In other words, to learn how to walk. After all, he was now a bona fide Sohn monster. You'll be even more surprised in a bit, Su Chi observed the little boy, who naturally could not escape the inquisitive information from the open box. He felt a flicker in his eyelids. Internally he cursed, "Trouble," because the information that popped up was, "The god of anxiety is about to launch an attack wanting to kill you instantly." And in the blink of an eye, without any hesitation, Su Chi's divine power burst forth. His entire body was blown away by the force, flying back a kilometer and crashing into the deep red sea waves. At the same time, where he had just been, was suddenly bound by countless deep red terrifying blood threads. That spot was annihilated in an instant. The air itself turned into nihility. Playing a surprise attack? Su Chi stood up, brushing the dust off himself. "Is this the god of anxiety?" The little boy looked calmly at Su Chi. "Mortal, it seems you're still unable to wield their powers perfectly. Even though you can endure, you can't use them flawlessly." He stretched out his hand. From the nihility of space, once again, countless blood threads surged out violently. Though they didn't seem as intimidating as the previous bloody tendrils, they concealed the terrifying might of annihilation, shredding space, blinkingly surging to strike at close range. The roaring explosions, ripples of annihilation were the result of every bit of air they passed through being obliterated. "Don't rush. I've always been quick to adapt." Su Chi's figure vanished on the spot, smashing through the surrounding crimson giant waves. Chapter 314. Holding the long sword pivot in his hand, he charged at the little boy. This item was a legendary one. Fortunately, there was no need to worry about any detrimental side effect from being destroyed. Diverse divine powers burst within Su Chi's body. In an instant, he crossed through vast blood waves, cutting off the bloodlines swirling towards him. He charged straight for the little boy. The little boy looked on indifferently, his eyes void of any emotions, as he reached towards his chest. His flesh was penetrated. He, too, showed no expression, as if he felt not the slightest pain. At this moment, in the distance, the yellow-robed priest watched the scene warily, eyebrows tightly furrowed. What is the god of anxiety doing? Why is he attacking himself? Even with its vast experiences, it failed to predict the actions of a being like the god of anxiety, whose techniques were endless. In that moment, Patrick and Brother Cat suddenly spat out blood. The yellow-robed priest was shocked. "What happened to you?" It then noticed that both had wounds similar to the little boy, a penetrated flesh wound, and its own spirit felt ripples of being dragged. However, having no physical body, it wasn't injured. Brother Cat weakly licked his wounds. Patrick also licked his wounds. "There's watermelon juice flowing here. Hey, why does it taste weird?" "That's freaking blood." The yellow-robed priest felt its nerves weaken. Damn it, weren't there any normal people associated with Su Buxian? And the next moment, the little boy again acted out self-harm, materializing a dagger in his hand and furiously stabbing it into his own heart. The yellow-robed priest shivered. It had realized what was happening and hurriedly covered Patrick's and Brother Cat's eyes. "Don't look. Whatever is seen, likewise will be inflicted. This is the power of the god of anxiety. Every wound it inflicts on itself will instantly be reflected on anyone who lays eyes on it." It had just recalled something from ancient records. There once was a world with billions of lives that all committed suicide overnight in the same pose. All lives bore the same wound. At that time, it was unknown what had happened. No trace was found, but now the yellow-robed priest was sure. That was the god of anxiety's descent upon that world. Su Buxian. After protecting Patrick and Brother Cat, the yellow-robed priest looked anxiously towards the battlefield. But Su Chi was not affected in the slightest. The so-called "seen and die" merely is. He glanced around him. A colossal ghost face appeared around his body as if it didn't belong to this space, invisible to anyone else. A terrifying ghost face was using a spiritual impact, forming an outer shell covering Su Chi's body. The ghost face even stretched out a hand, attempting to perform the exact same action as the little boy. It sought to penetrate Su Qi. This was the true manifestation of the god of anxiety's power, drawing out everyone's fear, anxiety, pressure, depression, and other negative emotions. It formed the ghost face, mimicking its actions. The ghost face even carried an indistinguishable whisper. Listening closely, it seemed to say, "Let me help you break free." Forget it. The god of anxiety does not cater to sunny and cheerful big boys. Su Qi's divine power surged and blasted towards the ghost face. Yet it passed right through. He raised his eyebrows slightly. The next moment they relaxed. His spiritual eyes slightly stirred, wrapped up with the force of the spirit. This time, the ghost face emitted a piercing scream, wanting to self-destruct, but Su Qi kicked it away. He continued advancing towards the little boy. The little boy, unhurried and calm, watched the scene unfold, fingers spread open. Around him, numerous ghost faces appeared, and countless sky dome meteors fell. The deep Red Sea was ever-changing, pulling in a great number of bloodlines carrying a deadly annihilation motive, besieging Su Qi. Su Qi's eyes flickered slightly, a large number of points burning, the protective power continually strengthening. Divine power was even more explosively unleashed. Amongst the clash of powers, it was apparent that Su Qi was at a disadvantage. After all, he had never been a god, and all the divine power within his body was external. Unlike the god of anxiety, who had arranged everything here, accumulating power over countless years, unmatched by anyone in experience. The sky dome thundered violently, but it wasn't the sound of thunder. Rather, it was the deafening noise caused by the massive oscillation of chains in the huge blood sea above. This meant the seal of the anxious land was being furiously bombarded. The time for it to escape its confines was fast approaching. The little boy looked at Su Qi, who was still expending divine power, the control of which had become vastly more perfect than when he first started, and spoke slowly and calmly. "You, indeed, are the most talented mortal I have seen, to have mastered such chaotic divine power in such a short time. But, unfortunately," the little boy gently looked at the virtual shadows behind Su Qi formed by the bursts of divine power. "The masters of those divine powers you had controlled were merely creatures I exterminated, and all their traits and abilities are just a repeated rehearsal of failure." Su Qi also slowly retracted his hand, noticing something. The little boy had seen through all his attacks, and those divine powers had been completely neutralized. "Indeed, you're right, you've seen their power. Even though it's being used by someone as clever as me, there hasn't been much of a change. Each time it was possible to use only one type of divine power at the same moment, and its limitations were indeed significant, one of the reasons why it was repeatedly seen through and disintegrated. Of course, even more significant was the terrifying adaptive ability of the god of anxiety. Its experience in killing was as natural as breathing, already far beyond ordinary understanding. Since this is the case, I have to show you something you've never seen before. Something you've never seen before. Heh. Even now, suppressed here, it remained a terrifying presence in the boundless abyss, thinking that a mere mortal carrying some divine power would suppress it. It had seen all sorts of tumultuous storms. Then let me show you something you haven't seen before. The little boy's eerie face harbored a hint of cold, murderous intent as he reached out his hand. Terrifying power burst forth. Thunderous sounds roared, igniting everything. At the end of the world, a crack appeared, also revealing itself on the coffin lid. The little boy's power was growing stronger by the second. "Now, mortal, you can die here." The little boy's voice was hoarse. The next moment, boom! The blood sea around him erupted with 10 times more rapacious bloodlines than before, clashing with the vast meteorites and death energy cores from all directions, converging as they besieged Su Qi. It was like space closing and contracting. There was no path of escape. The power of the god of anxiety has once again markedly increased. Su Qi could see clearly now. The cores of these divine powers were powerful but limited. To kill the god of anxiety in front of him right now was completely insufficient. He could only rely on his own strength. At that moment, protective light burst forth, void serenity's surge bubbling up, divine power as a backup energy source. Su Chi slowly pulled out the speaker, old days music burning through void serenity's points, instantly suppressing the boiling deep red waves on the sea's surface. Invincible BGM, divine power enhanced version during the music's duration. You will match any enemy stronger than you equally. He then pulled out the Thunder Hammer. Thunder Hammer, divine power enhanced version 100% summoning thunderbolts. Possesses the power to destroy all things. He then put on his shoes. Dark Wind Boots, divine power enhanced version. You will be able to momentarily turn into nihility for 1 second. 10 chances to break space instantly. You can appear at any place within 10 kilometers around you. All these under the enhancement of Void Serenity, completely transformed in effect. The next moment, Su Chi looked at the enclosed death trap before him and instantly vanished from the spot, appearing before the little boy, under the astonished eyes of the god of anxiety, holding the Thunder Hammer, with a mighty slam down, like a purple thunderstorm raining down from the sky dome. Countless thunderbolts pierced through everything from above. Sweeping downward, the god of anxiety's expression changed, as he sensed a threat. However, it was not a big problem. His entire body twisted in deep red, and in an instant he teleported away, reaching a place dozens of kilometers away. But Su Chi didn't loosen his hold on the hammer, instead continuing to smash downwards. Can you escape? Rubik's Cube, divine power enhanced version, activates. Chapter 315 Whole Field MVP. Magic Cube, divine power blessed version 1, Magic Cube domain. Can form a separate Magic Cube space, capable of pulling in up to 1,000 targets. Once the space is formed, it will exist indefinitely unless destroyed or its sustaining energy completely dissipates. 2. 6-sided Rubik's Cube. 3 sides for attack, 3 sides for defense, allowing for free combinations of offensive and defensive maneuvers when rotated. The earlier items were either drawn from Paradise or acquired from the traveling merchant. But the Rubik's Cube was a reward obtained from completing ! And the effect after the blessing differed slightly, in other words, different limits. The current effect is clearly somewhat abnormal. At the same time, boom! An astonishing, peculiar fluctuation suddenly struck at the heart of the god of anxiety. What is this? Feeling something ominous, it was about to shift again. Its form vanished repeatedly, but it was no use as a strong pull directly ignored all space. The next moment, the god of anxiety was pulled into the Magic Cube domain. It furrowed its brows, questioning this strange power, but now was not the time to think about it. As thunderous might burst forth from the sky dome, echoing and reflecting off the Thunder Hammer, directly engulfing it. A hoarse, muffled growl escaped from the throat of the god of anxiety. Ordinary pain could not make it feel anything, for it could not truly harm it, but this thunder posed a sufficiently potent threat. It was an energy entity, possessing a separated will for control. Yet now it was penetrated by thunder in midair, continuous thunder. Even as it burst forth in a deep red eruption, it struggled to free itself for a moment. At the same time, Su Chi did not pause for an instant. The Rubik's Cube was turning. 6 faces, countless cubes within the Magic Cube space, all rotating simultaneously. Huge dark star cubes flashed through space, all heading for the god of anxiety. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions. Crushing. Inch by inch. Annihilation. The terrifying power finally made the god of anxiety reach its limit. Scram! It suddenly roared out a single word. A vast, deep red fluctuation exploded out from its center, billowing and bursting forth. The power of unrest poured out. Countless bloodlines burst from its body. Like a dense, blood-red spiderweb, it occupied the entire space of 3,000 meters in an instant. The speed was extreme, allowing no time for any reaction. In an instant, Su Chi appeared 3,000 meters away, frowning intently at everything before him. At this very moment, the small boy's body had shattered, countless bloodlines were retracting, enveloping a gigantic shadowy figure. In just a few breaths, a grand and eerily intense figure was stitched together by the bloodlines. It was like a precisely crafted flesh instrument, every inch of its form pervaded with the breath of unrest's annihilation. Dark red skin, mottled blood shooting from its eyes. This was the true form of the god of anxiety. Su Chi too felt a horrifying presence rushing at him. His clothing whipped about by the fierce wind, hair flying. You! Its deep red eyes focused on Su Chi. Your name. What, you want to engrave it on your family's tombstone? The hoarse voice of the god of anxiety stirred up waves. I will devour your flesh. Your soul will settle in the depths of my sea. In time you will become one of my infinite deep red core. The so-called deep red core was actually the product of it slaying countless people, turning them into monsters within its own core, of course devoid of any consciousness, merely crushed walking corpses. Thanks, but I lead my own team. Su Chi did not linger any longer. He left his original position. Boom! Where he was, countless bloodlines penetrated again. Even as the god of anxiety spoke, it was constantly launching terrifying assassination attempts. Were it not for the question mark, constantly bursting with information, Su Chi himself would have had a hard time preparing. Moreover, the power of the god of anxiety was even greater now. Countless bloodlines stained with surging deep red erupting over the waves. The magic cube space was still there. A multitude of cubes continued to change, forming a defense within the space. Boom, boom, boom. The frightful power met with the cube defense. The air vibrated tremendously. Centered around them, all the waves below were split apart. But could the power of the god of anxiety be limited to just this? Attacks of such terror came from all around, bursting forth without stop. Su Chi did not shift away to escape again. There weren't many opportunities left. The time had not yet come. His form shook with the vibrations. Divine power and protective strength flashed. Had it been his own original strength, by now he likely would have been ground to pieces. And now any flaws or errors could lead to a fatal end. After all, the gaze of the god of anxiety was fixed on every move Su Chi made. The cubes were continuously breaking, but were rapidly refilled, a great number of points burning, though only the financially robust Su Chi could afford such expenditure. Boom! The space vibrated. The cubes surrounding Su Chi collapsed instantly. Why still struggle? The god of anxiety spoke softly. What's wrong with relief from release? Its tone seemed unhurried, yet it gently waved its hand. Limitless deathly attacks surged towards Su Chi. Su Chi's cubes burst once again. The remaining divine power gathered to continue the defense. You clearly see no hope at all. It looked up to the sky dome. Deep red light descending. Countless chains vibrated madly. The cracks in the coffin lid widening bit by bit. Everything here will shatter. To resist is only endless agony. Chapter 316. Every inch of space around was changing. Visions of the walking dead were materializing, driven by emotions of cruelty, death, and despair, with countless bloodlines attacking from all directions. The god of anxiety enunciated word by word. Let me take you to the real world. The magic cube domain was already in grave danger. Yet Su Chi had already reached out his hand. You are right. But, sorry, I forgot the beginning, the middle, and the end. Only one sentence remains. Su Chi gathered all the cubes, and the aura on his body slowly converged, with a faint fluctuation beginning to stir. God of anxiety, you should die. From the time he had started playing, everything he had obtained just went through a transformation, with a mass of points burning furiously, reaching a terrifying limit. The next moment, a multitude of cubes burst violently apart. The entire magic cube domain was utterly destroyed. But at the same time, Su Chi's figure instantly vanished. The god of anxiety was clearly prepared. The moment Su Qi disappeared, countless bloodlines, lurking in nihility, arrived in an instant. Come! Su Qi raised his hand. The sky dome seemed to ignite, as a majestic fire dragon roared out. The deep red sea boiled as if on fire. Everything it passed, even the air and sea water, burned. There was a slight change in the eyes of the god of anxiety. This nature is the undying fire, quite a troublesome, mortal. However, it wasn't a big problem. The god of anxiety was just about to deal with this fire dragon. But the next moment, Su Qi had activated blinding. The deep red pupils of the god of anxiety trembled suddenly, and the entire sky dome plummeted into darkness. All senses had fallen into the abyss. Every piece of information vanished, and all around, darkness was consuming him. Felt like falling into the abyss. Omniscient interference. A look of doubt appeared on the god of anxiety's face. With no hesitation, it burst forth with tremendous strength, not to break free but to escape from there. Once consumed by the darkness, this part of its will too would be utterly lost within. But just as it blinked out of the darkness, Su Qi had already rapidly approached its side, and suddenly grabbed its shoulder. "You dare to engage in close combat," the god of anxiety said with a hoarse, deep voice, clearly a massive vulnerability. Bloodlines on its body burst forth instantaneously, leaving Su Qi with no time to react, and in a sealing and cutting manner, it besieged every possible path Su Qi could survive. Even if he used his ability to blink away, in the 0.01 seconds instant, a mark would be left behind. So, no matter where he blinked to, bloodlines would follow relentlessly, until he was completely killed and brought to annihilation. But Su Qi did not blink away. Instead, he slightly curled his lips. "Let's die together." Suicide skill he had been following for a long time. "Let's die together" was triggered. With Su Qi as the epicenter, a black hole the size of a fist formed. It seemed unremarkable, but it was compressing an endless and terrifying energy. It was not a black circle but a spatial collapse caused by the overwhelming energy. The god of anxiety's expression finally changed drastically. "You!" But it couldn't finish its sentence. All divine power burst forth in an instant. The black hole instantly expanded, terrifying energy bringing annihilation to everything. At this moment, not even a sound could escape. Only the surrounding waves were being drawn, creating boundless tidal waves. Boom, boom, boom. The yellow-robed priest looked on in shock at this scene. Maybe he had been too loud when speaking to Su Buxian earlier. Just what was the origin of this guy? Under annihilation, the entire sea surface had actually formed a circular void. At this moment, the waves obscured the vision of the trio, with the impact being blocked by the yellow-robed priest. Another moment. The pupils of the yellow-robed priest constricted. He saw the figures of Su Qi and the god of anxiety, both within the giant black hole where everything was being annihilated. "Damned mortal!" the god of anxiety roared. A mass of blood red constantly being annihilated, countless bloodlines were shattering inch by inch. Strength was rapidly being eroded. It wanted to escape from this place. "Get out of my way!" But Su Qi wouldn't give in, clenching his teeth firmly, frantically keeping the god of anxiety in place. "Damn it! Can't you just stay here quietly?" This giant black hole of nihility was formed from the collision between Su Qi's self-destruction and the god of anxiety's bloodlines, creating a space of absolute death. Anything inside would be annihilated. The god of anxiety's rich preparations were no exception. So, it was frantically trying to escape from here, not wanting to perish together with Su Qi. Otherwise, its countless years of preparation for escape would be completely wasted. And Su Qi used everything to intercept. Now it had reached this moment. How could he let this guy get away? The emblem of Sri Lanka, although rendering him immune to the death from self-destruction, did not shield him from the terrifying annihilation nihility space. He was now, just like the god of anxiety, being eroded inch by inch. Of course, The difference was, Su Chi could still see the pop-up windows with data plummeting rapidly. It would destroy everything, whether life force or all energy. Paradise, you are indeed diligent, but there are 3 seconds left. The god of anxiety noticed this too. After all, Su Chi's protective strength was not holding up at all. The integration of points could not keep up with the speed of annihilation, crumbling from outside to inside in frenzy. A terrifying expression on its face grew a few degrees colder. Die, die, die. As long as the opponent died, it could leave the space of annihilation without any hindrance, immediately. Chapter 317. But the next moment, Su Chi's body moved, and he suddenly landed a punch on the face of the god of anxiety. You yelling into the mic over there. Just when Su Chi's body was about to break apart, at this moment it again burst forth with a majestic vitality. Unrivaled, activated. All his attributes returned to their peak, and without the previous limitations, but the terrifying speed of annihilation was still extremely fearsome. Su Chi could only hold on for less than 10 seconds. 10. 9. Su Chi counted down and was still dragging the god of anxiety down with him. All the strength of the god of anxiety was drastically shrinking. Its body was crumbling inch by inch. It was insane, howling, furious. But it wasn't completely annihilated. The power from Su Chi's burst was also rapidly depleting, weakening. He could barely hold onto the god of anxiety now. In the last second, the god of anxiety suddenly let out a low roar and, using its last bit of energy, burst out from amidst the annihilation. And it was still being held onto by Su Chi, who was clutching it tightly. Damn it, is this guy really that hard to kill? Su Chi's scalp tingled. He no longer had much strength, annihilation would destroy everything, and divine power was fast dissipating. The god of anxiety was also very weak at this point. Its body tattered and torn, all from the wounds of annihilation, and unlike before, it couldn't recover at all. Its eyes were blood red. It wasn't the effect of pupils, but it was truly heated to an extreme, terrifying blood vessels pervading within the pupils. Staring intently at Su Chi, it had almost been completely annihilated by a mortal, ruining everything. You! Damn it! It burst out in rage. Extending a trembling hand, the last of its strength aimed to completely kill Su Chi, the troublemaker. And Su Chi was pierced through. Yet his expression was calm. And he wasn't dead. The previously charged tenacity from his combat attribute had been passively triggered, now providing immunity to his surroundings. The points I topped up before, the skills prepared, now only the last one remains. Su Chi slowly extended his hand, the mosquito that forever buzzed in one's ears. The last skill enhanced by divine power. As the god of anxiety roared attacking Su Chi, an ordinary, inconspicuous mosquito buzzed by as if cloaked in invisibility. Even when imbued with power, it still looked like an insignificant ordinary mosquito. And the furiously enraged god of anxiety took no notice of this tiny creature. It slowly settled on the body of the god of anxiety. His proboscis pierced in. With a sudden suck, it felt as if the entire blood sea had sunk by a centimeter in an instant. And the god of anxiety shivered all over, its eyes staring in shock at the mosquito. No! A roar of alarm and rage echoed endlessly through the world. All its remaining strength collapsed at that moment. Its will broke free, being sucked into the coffin. It was falling apart. Insane. In its desperation, it tried to drag Su Chi to mutual destruction. But Su Chi waved at it. I won't be staying over. With the god of anxiety's outrage echoing long, a shadowy silhouette was dragged back to where the coffin lay. Chains shook violently, their flickering light suppressing it. The god of anxiety completely dissipated under this part of the sky dome. He collapsed weakly onto the ground. Finally, it's over. The sky dome, the terrifying onslaught outside the deep red fissure, halted like losing its core. Although the collapse of the anxious land wasn't restored, it would no longer continue. Also, I forgot to tell the god of anxiety. That mosquito, enhanced by divine power, not only can't be killed, but it will also enter the coffin with it, keeping it company at all times. Chapter 318. Go to the hospital. Everything in the sky dome was gradually fading away. The deep Red Sea was rapidly receding. Countless chains were pulling the coffin back into the chaos of nihility, leaving only the scent of decay permeating the air. And the surroundings were slowly changing. After the redness had faded, the appearance of the city once again emerged in Suchi's sight. However, it was very different from before, empty and dilapidated, as if it had existed here for a very long time. The only difference was that it felt a bit more real. Suchi was lying on the ground. He could no longer feel the existence of his body. After all, even with the power of protection, he had reached his limit. Meow. A paw was placed on Suchi's face. Brother Cat, have you washed your feet? Suchi asked calmly. Meow meow. Brother Cat arrogantly turned his head away, ignoring him, then slowly glanced at him again, licking his wound with his tongue, trying to heal some of his injuries. The yellow-robed priest also floated over, looking at the sky dome in astonishment and murmured, Su Buxian, god of anxiety, was defeated. Suchi. Otherwise, Brother Huang, are you disappointed that you didn't get to fight the god of anxiety a second time? It seemed he wasn't going to die yet, still mocking himself. The yellow-robed priest took a deep breath. It originally only wanted to sneak in and quietly use the power of a lower-ranking god's temple to restore its soul fire. But the things that happened along the way were completely out of control. Utterly absurd, not only lingering on the edge of death but also moving very swiftly and stylishly, even falling to the very last layer after dozing off. Thrown into a desperate fight for life against the god of anxiety. And all the trouble was caused by this guy in front of him. However, the yellow-robed priest was no rookie, and it knew there were others standing behind, guiding, as it was quite familiar with the god's palace and anxious land. It could almost ascertain the identity of the guider who had appeared before, and who the behind-the-scenes existence that had been providing Suchi with strength was the divine of the god's palace. With that thought, the yellow-robed priest's body slightly trembled. It quickly looked toward the temple passage under the sky dome appearing once again. It seems we can leave now, it said. If you can't move right now, I can carry you. Let's hurry and leave this dreadful place. No need to rush. Suchi, supporting himself on Brother Hai Xing's shoulder, stood up. Follow me somewhere first. Patrick and Brother Cat didn't object. The yellow-robed priest's mouth twitched imperceptibly. Where to? Of course, to deliver something. Suchi hooked up his lips. And then to get something. After being busy for most of the day, and solving such a huge trouble. Not having a worthy benefit would be absolutely unacceptable for Suchi. The yellow-robed priest could only first enter the ring and follow. As a sole entity, it couldn't stay outside for long, and without the yellow robe, it couldn't go far on its own. It could only first hide in the ring and see if the place Suchi was going to was similar to what it had in mind. Suchi walked towards the interior of the city being the final core area manifested by the anxious land. Although it looked like a city, in reality, every inch of the road was strange, eerie, condensed with black fog. He could see many traces that had been hidden, like street accidents involving flying cars, exploding gas cylinders, falling billboards, and uncontrollable subways, which were actually the evolution of some powerful objects or unstable forces. The room of the god of anxiety was where its power was sealed. Traces of ancient battlefields were everywhere on the streets. And the large numbers of ordinary people in the entire city were actually ancient souls killed by the god of anxiety in the ancient battlefield or who had fallen into this place, imprisoned here perpetually as feared by the yellow-robed priest, wantonly slaughtered, experiencing various accidental deaths all the time, unable to escape from this pain. This was the terrifying nature of the god of anxiety. Walking along the streets, a cold wind blew through the city, and the sewers released a foul smell, and he could faintly see a large amount of black fog rushing from below. Those were not just sewers. but black fog that was extremely thick. The will of the god of anxiety is deep red, and the power of the black fog is also a symbol of the abyss. Perhaps this is one of the precarious reasons for the anxious land. After walking for about 20 minutes, Su Chi navigated through various streets of the city. We're here. Finally, in a corner of the city shrouded in fog, Su Chi spotted an abandoned hospital surrounded by fog and fences. Meow! Brother Cat meowed, taking a cautious step back. Patrick was also shivering at this moment. Why is it a bit cold, hey? He pulled his pants up to wear them as a jumpsuit, but it couldn't change the situation of being cold all over. The yellow-robed priest was also observing the place, its eyelids twitching. This place has a very thick and dreadful aura, and the entire hospital is black and white. The entire hospital. There was not a trace of life or any other color, completely different from the city's scenery. Black trees, chairs with rotting black stripes. The soil on the ground could only be seen as gray-black. Are we sure we want to go in here? The yellow-robed priest murmured. Let's go. Su Chi had recovered quite a bit by now, his protective strength shining again. Don't worry, there shouldn't be a problem. Chapter 319. He stepped into the black and white overtone of the hospital space. A moment later, he felt a strong, lethal presence. All around was black and white, only their group of people existed in color. Countless black and white seemed like they would devour anything with color, charging straight at them. And Brother Hai Xing just dumbfoundedly stretched out his hand. What is this? Brother Hai Xing, stop messing around. Su Chi was startled and quickly pulled the curious Patrick back. Damn it, everything here looks wrong. Only you would reach out and touch it. He placed Brother Cat on Patrick's shoulder. Brother Cat, watch it for a moment. You must not leave a 2-meter radius from me. Right now, it seems that only Brother Cat can connect with Patrick's wavelength. This place is very dangerous. Su Chi looked at the black and white hospital in front of him. Although he had eliminated the external threat of the god of anxiety, the real peril of the anxious land, the erosion of the abyss power, and so on were all still concentrated in this place. To suppress it here was also to imprison oneself here. Getting inside will be somewhat troublesome. After the battle with the god of anxiety, his connection with Dolly had also been severed, and now without much information he wanted to patch up the current hole in the anxious land, and by the way, cash in the lottery ticket worth over 100 billion. But he was stuck on the road to claiming the prize, which was a bit hard to bear. What do you think, Brother Huang? Yellow-robed priest. How should I look at it? Any normal person could tell at a glance that this place is extremely dangerous. Can you not enter? Su Chi paused. I can't. The yellow-robed priest sighed. Although he already knew the answer, he was still troubled. Just take out some useless item, remember the information on it, and then throw it outside the protective power. Su Chi pulled out a flyer from his pocket, which he had just collected from outside, and looked over its information. High-paying job. Phone number 189. The yellow-robed priest growled. Don't read it aloud. Su Chi then let Patrick and Brother Cat also take a glance at the flyer. Then he threw it into the black and white, and the next moment the flyer was eroded by the black and white and lost its color. The yellow-robed priest softly said, Now see if you can recall the information just now? Brother Cat meowed oddly, as if it couldn't remember anything, shaking its head. Patrick, drooling, biting his finger, said, What information? Su Chi doubted that he had remembered it in the first place. What about you? The yellow-robed priest looked at Su Chi. Su Chi paused, recalling in his mind. Indeed, it seemed all the information he had just remembered was gone. He then cast his gaze back to this place. Actually, from the moment he stood outside the black and white space, Su Chi had already sensed something was off because there was no question mark here. I don't remember either. What exactly is going on here? The yellow-robed priest softly said. This is the most terrifying strength of the abyss. Once eroded, you lose your existence. Lose all traces, you'll be forgotten by the world. As if you never arrived. nor can you ever leave. There was a trace of almost imperceptible sorrow on the face of the yellow-robed priest, but it passed in a flash, and he sighed softly. Anyway, the hospital you want to enter has an even denser concentration of abyss power. Consider it carefully yourself. Having said these things, even Su Qi should be wary, after all, losing all existence. Wait a second. Su Qi softly said, I want to try something. He gathered divine power, enhancing the protective strength. The powerful aura gave Su Qi once again a slightly different presence. All his power focused on his eyes, and his gaze concentrated on that flyer. The next moment, Su Qi's eyelids twitched fiercely, because that flyer's question marks were revealed. Old Day's flyer, information above. He actually saw the information. At the same time, the previous memories also resurfaced. High-paying job, phone, contact person, photos, and so on. What's going on? Wasn't it said that existence would be permanently lost? Wasn't it said that all traces would completely disappear? Why could he see again? And there was no time to ponder these things, because at this moment, the color of the flyer seemed to show a slight tendency to regress. It was just a tiny spot. Boom! It was as if Su Qi had done something terrifying. The entire hospital's black and white colors suddenly erupted. Endless black and white broke out uncontrollably. Even space tore open. A crack to the abyss opened, threatening to devour everything. The anxious land darkened by a fraction. The yellow-robed priest was shocked and fearful. What's happened? Su Qi immediately stopped probing. He retracted a major part of his strength and shifted his gaze away from the flyer. Facing the yellow-robed priest's question, he shook his head. I don't know. Maybe you spoke too loudly just now, disturbing these abyssal forces. Su Qi focused on the black and white before him. He didn't act rashly. The abyss had just erupted, with an indescribable feeling, as if continuing to look would trigger some kind of extreme, irreversible danger. Brother Huang, is there a way to restore these things to their original state? Su Qi asked softly. The yellow-robed priest shook his head. Not that I know of, no. The divine can't do it. The higher gods? Also no. The supreme. Enough. The yellow-robed priest cursed. I already told you it's impossible. As far as I know, this is beyond all rules. No god can work, and what exactly is on that to make you so concerned about it? Su Qi understood then. His ability, represented by question marks and exclamation points, had already exceeded these rules, and it even had the capacity to grow. Just now he couldn't see, simply because his own strength was too weak. After forcibly enhancing it, the first question mark appeared, which seemed different from the previous theory of destiny traces. Destiny is about capturing traces to get information. But now, the traces have all disappeared, yet he could still see. Old days. These two words seemed to be the key to everything. All right, Brother Haixing, stop picking your nose. Follow me, we have to go in. There was no need to worry about Brother Haixing's boogers entering the abyss power and then losing the existence of the boogers, because individual actions should not affect the source, and besides, Patrick had dealt with it quite cleanly, directly stuffing it into the mouth and swallowing it down. And so, with the color of existence, under the protection of Su Qi's power, they stepped into the hospital steeped in black and white tones. Upon entering, Su Qi felt as if his entire body was plunging into the abyss. The surrounding black ripples came from all directions. Endless black fog formed into all sorts of vaguely shaped monsters, some roaring on the ceiling, screeching in the cubicles, and murmuring at the front desk. And there was disorderly mumbling to oneself. The most important thing was, every step they took, what they saw, heard, and smelled would change, creating a sensation like a science fiction movie where time suddenly sped up and images changed wildly. Be careful, the yellow-robed priest whispered. This place is almost similar to the real abyss, the source of all mental collapses, the origin of the strange. Normal people can't look, can't listen. Otherwise, they'll be left with a mark of fear. Don't worry, we don't have any normal people. The yellow-robed priest was stunned. Turning to look at Su Chi and the other two, Patrick was picking his nose with curiosity. Brother Cat was licking his paws, seemingly unaffected. And Su Buxian. He was strolling leisurely through the hospital corridors, stepping onto stairs, passing through countless images, countless abyssal manifestations of terrifying monsters. Fortified by the protective power infused in the points of high-ranking beings, already shining brilliantly. Su Chi kicked away all the black monsters that were attracted, walking straight to the final third-floor sealed door. He reached out and gently knocked on the door. "Anyone there?" "Dr. Su Buxian, here to collect my salary." Chapter 320. The Treasury of the God's Palace. Dolly and the bell ringer stared silently at the grizzled monitor. Since Su Chi had officially confronted the god of anxiety, their connection had been severed. And, due to the rebellion in the anxious land, the monitor had also lost information. "What exactly is happening outside now?" Dolly murmured anxiously. "Who knows?" The bell ringer's expression was extremely solemn as he spoke hoarsely. "Without the guidance of the Eye of Destiny, we can't see anything." They were trapped deep within this hospital, unable to go anywhere. This was the core land for suppressing the god of anxiety, gathering the vast evil strength of the anxious land along with the endless black fog of the abyss. Although they spoke of suppressing the god of anxiety in nice terms, in another sense they were also imprisoned here. In this place that had lost its existence, only the third floor maintained a soul trace. Now we have no information from the outside world, and the results of the battle are unclear. Dolly's eyes were heavy. Their only channel of contact with the outside world was the Eye of Destiny, namely the monitor and stethoscope, both of which had now lost their function, indicating that the outside space was on the brink of collapse, teetering on the edge of catastrophe. At that moment, boom, 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 the entire hospital suddenly shook violently. The terrifying black fog enraged tumultuously, and the aura of the abyss became extremely dangerous, as if it was about to swallow this place. Dolly and the bell ringers' faces instantly turned pale. The strength of the abyss is rebelling. The strength here was suppressed by several gods together with the main temple. Under normal circumstances, such a commotion would never occur. Even if, on occasion, monsters from the old days within the black fog intruded, the bell ringer would take the special items from here to dispel them. For such a violent outburst to occur, there could only be one possibility. The god of anxiety had broken the ceiling, reawakened the strength of the abyss, and the entire anxious land had completely fallen. The terrifying fluctuations had come quickly and left just as fast. Yet there was no peace to follow. Their hearts had already sunk to the bottom, listening to the dense black fog trembling below. They glanced at each other, and with their countless years of experience, they knew someone had stepped into this area. It seems he still failed. Dolly slowly unclenched his tight fist. The bell ringer maintained a calm demeanor, yet his body trembled imperceptibly, murmuring softly. It was always a low-probability event. Hoping against hope was just wishful thinking now. Dolly slowly laid down the white lab coat and reached out his hand to take out a long dagger with a cold gleam from the lifted floorboards. The bell ringer also took out his own weapon, his aura heavy and filled with killing intent. "Let's go." The two stood tall, their voices a bit deep, their demeanor resolute to the point of facing death. "Before the entire anxious land collapses, I also want to give my last bit of effort. Even if we perish, the present world, God's palace, still has hope of existing." They had already gathered all their soul power, drawing their most powerful weapons, ready to ignite their soul fire and perish together with the god of anxiety that entered this place. This is the battle we have long awaited to fight, yet it is also the last. Dolly had already seen the closed doors in the third-floor corridor. The droplets of black fog seeping from those doors contained the most desperate evil and horror in the world. "And that Su Buxian?" Dolly sighed softly. "The most outstanding assistant in history, someone beyond all our predictions. If he could have simply survived, with those points, he definitely had a bright future ahead of him. Unfortunately, fate being what it is, The last hope shattered, leaving no time for the present world, nor for that youngster. He's here. The bell ringer held his weapon tightly, his soul fire shining, sensing the activity behind the door, with numerous desperate measures on standby. The rippling of the black fog took their seriousness to the utmost. Although they were here to suppress the god of anxiety, in reality, this was their first time facing it head-on. No, to be precise, it shouldn't be called facing it, but rather blocking it. They would exert all their strength in the moment the anxious land collapsed, before the gods awoke, valuing each second of time dragged out as a worthy sacrifice. Bang! A dull knock echoed. Both tensed up, yet their expressions paused for a moment. Would the god of anxiety still knock? After such long oppression, they shouldn't appear with anything less than full fury and a terrifying burst, so polite. And the next moment, a familiar voice asked, "Is anyone there?" Dolly trembled all over. He hurriedly looked incredulously towards the door. The bell ringer's trembling fingers opened the door. The door. Su Chi stood with his friends, smiling at them, then observing the armor and weapons they wore, and the dangerous aura around them. What's this? Preparing for a violent struggle? Su Buxian. Both widened their eyes, before either had a chance to speak further. Take these. Su Chi casually tossed a few items wrapped in a black bag. They caught the items somewhat stunned. What's this stuff? Su Chi walked over calmly. Nothing valuable, just the core parts of your superiors. Their hands almost trembled. Dolly roared. Then don't throw them around carelessly, and using a plastic trash bag to carry them. Without another word, the bell ringer ran to several wards, clutching the black plastic bag. These core parts were crucial elements for suppressing the anxious land.